We have quite a few witnesses today, and so we're going to try to be as efficient as possible. And we're going to start with Miss Cindy Ott, yes, who is here with her attorney. And the committee was notified that Leanne, I don't know what I'm saying, is it Foray or Forret?
Foray.
Foray? Yeah, that she will not be able to testify today and has been excused. Okay. Representative Marchette.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Chairman, Vice Chair Jordan. Are we going to implement the 3-minute rule as we have done in the past so that we could expedite this matter?
If it becomes necessary, we'll go through the first couple of witnesses. We feel we need it, we will certainly do that.
I would certainly like to do that.
All right, do you want to make that motion?
I certainly do.
All right, so we have a motion to implement the 3-minute rule. Is there any objection? There's no objection to implementing the 3-minute rule. The 3-minute rule is in effect. So in effect, just so that you will understand, what we've done is implemented a 3-minute rule, so we're actually to limit your testimony, your opening statements to 3 minutes. If any questions are asked, each individual question will last about no more than 3 minutes, but you can, I mean, it could be unlimited questions, but we just try to do that to be efficient.
We have not actually prepared any opening statement in this matter. We've responded to your subpoena to answer any questions. I'm sorry.
Put a mic closer to you.
It's not on. Is it on now?
Yeah,
there you go. Sorry about that. We have actually not prepared any.
Please introduce yourself.
I'm sorry. My name is Catherine Mare. I'm an attorney. I represent Miss Ott, Cindy Ott, here in these proceedings. Ms. Ott has not actually prepared any statement. She is responding to this subpoena that you've issued to her to answer any questions that the committee may have of her in this matter.
All right. Thank you. And as I understand it, Ms. Ott was one of the EMS workers that arrived on the scene to attend to Mr. Greene?
That is correct.
All right. Does Ms. Ott wish to make any statements?
No, sir.
Okay. Do we have any questions for Ms. Ott? Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Ott? Okay, hold on one second. Representative Bacala.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Ott. Listen, we're only here for information purpose only, so please feel relaxed. I know you brought your attorney, but just in furtherance, you had the occasion to pick up Mr. Greene's at the scene and transport him to a hospital, correct?
That is correct.
And when y'all arrived, what did y'all see signs of life on the scene? I know that some of the reports I've read mentioned that on the way to the hospital it appeared that he died. Do you feel like he had passed away at the scene, or had he passed away in the ambulance?
When we got there, he was apneic, and I could not find a pulse. So we moved him quickly to the...
All right. Which in lay terms mean that you saw no signs of life on the scene?
That's correct.
Okay. And in the ambulance, you guys started CPR?
That is correct.
And I noticed in the autopsy report there's a reference to fracture to the sternum and some other internal damage. Is that could be, some of that damage could be from you guys conducting CPR?
That is indicative of CPR.
And could you tell me what other injuries might be indicative of the CPR?
You'd have lacerated liver, punctured lung.
Right. Okay, so just it's conceivable that some of the injuries that were noted in the autopsy were as a result of the CPR.
That is correct.
Okay, and besides, could you briefly describe the external injuries which you saw on Mr. Greene when you first encountered him, and that might be lacerations, bruise, whatever you might have seen?
His face was covered in blood. There was some lacerations to the face and forehead. Also noted blood to the left side of his head, as well as he had tree bark noted in his hairline to the left side of his head.
Okay. Is there anything else that you might, and I'm under the 3-minute rule, so I'm trying to go quickly. Is there anything else that you recall that might be of interest as we have this inquiry going forward?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problem. Representative Marcel.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today, Ms. Ott. Do you recall? First of all, do you know any of the officers that were there? Because you work this area frequently. Is that accurate to say?
Yes.
Okay, well-
I knew the two Parish deputies,
And who were they, ma'am?
Chris Harper and Cade Nolan.
Chris Harper,
Uh-huh.
and who else?
Cade Nolan.
Cade Nolan. And how long would you say it took you to get to the scene from the call? Do you know?
From the time we were dispatched to on scene was 20 minutes.
20 minutes. And so you all left the scene and went straight to the hospital.
Yes, ma'am.
And what's that distance?
It was 17 miles, and it took approximately 22 minutes.
About 22 minutes. And you've already said that you saw lacerations and his face was
His face was covered in blood.
covered in blood. Anything else you noticed about his body?
He had, we removed taser probe from the left chest wall, left wrist, as well as the left lower back.
Okay, so can you slow down and tell me where were those taser?
Left chest wall,
Okay,
left wrist,
okay.
and the left lower back.
Lower back.
Yes, ma'am.
And so you've seen that quite frequently when you get to the scene? Have you ever seen that?
We have seen people that's been tasered. Yes.
So it's common to see them. It was on the inner side of the wrist, like in a defense. You don't remember?
Honestly, I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
It's been too long.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for your testimony again. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Rep. Marcel. Representative Villio.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Good afternoon, Ms. Ott. The only question I have, and it's not far off the lines from Rep. Marcel, do you by chance have a list of the officers who were present on the scene when you arrived? Is that something you would have or make note of in your report, the names of any individuals on the scene?
No, ma'am. We just list the agencies like Union, Louisiana State Police. Like, the only reason I knew the deputies were because I worked with them.
Sure. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Excuse me. All right, I do have a few questions. So, when you were dispatched, what did this dispatcher tell you? What type of scene were you
Dispatched to a traffic accident.
to? A traffic accident. And when you got to the scene, did the officers tell you that it was a traffic accident?
I don't remember speaking to the officers. I spoke to the first responders on scene, the volunteer fire department members, and they told me he was unresponsive, and we kind of went from there.
All right. So I'm just curious. So when they make these, when they dispatch out, the volunteer fire department and EMS both report to the scene, and is it just that the volunteer fire department got there before you guys?
They are about a mile and a half away. We're 15,
Okay.
14.
So had they performed any type of CPR or resuscitative type measures before you got there?
No, they had started doing like vital signs and stuff like that.
Okay. Did you ever speak to any of the officers about what happened on the scene?
Honestly, I don't really remember, but in EMS, usually when you have somebody that's unresponsive, you kind of get tunnel vision, and
Right.
I only have eyes for one person at that point.
All right. Well, look, I appreciate it. Hold on. Representative Bacala again.
I think you covered it.
All right. Representative Marcel.
Yeah, you mentioned the fire department was there for the rescue.
Yes.
So do you know what time the call came? And they got there before you guys.
Yes.
You know how long they had been there?
Not exactly. We don't have their times. They were there before us, though.
So I don't want to cut you off, but was it Like a 911 call goes out, right?
They call for EMS. When we go en route, we ask them to dispatch first responders of that area.
Okay, so that meant that the fire department arrived there before you,
Yes.
and did they assist you?
Yes.
They did. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Marcel. Representative Bacala again.
I do have one more question. When you arrived and the fire department personnel were on working on him, can you tell me, was Mr. Greene sitting in a sitting position, laying down on his back, on his side? What and it's
When we got there, he was being propped up against a state trooper's leg.
and was he handcuffed, leg
Yes.
irons?
I'm not 100% sure about the leg irons, but he was handcuffed.
Okay, and did you guys ask that the handcuffs be removed, or how did
Yes.
that? Okay, so
But they did not wish to completely unhandcuff him, so they handcuffed his right arm to the stretcher.
all right, and then if I'm not mistaken, a law enforcement officer rode with you guys to the
Yes.
so y'all were accompanied in the back of the ambulance, I guess.
Yes.
Okay, and at the hospital, just give me a real quick. When you get to the hospital, he's unloaded. I know. At what point is he uncuffed? Is it creating an issue for the treatment? Of course, I know he's CPR.
They said he had to be uncuffed, and
That's uncuffed from the bed, from
Yeah.
the stretcher.
Yes, and from there he was moved over to Glenwood's stretcher.
And it ended at what point was CPR stopped?
It was stopped in the ER at had that time somewhere. They stopped it in the ER.
Okay, and could you tell me roughly how long it was after he arrived at the ER that they determined he could not be resuscitated? Just roughly. I mean, if it's 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, somewhere in that.
Just off the top of my head, I cannot tell you. If I look through this report long enough, I'll find the time it was discontinued.
Well, do you know what time you arrived? I think we'd need that if you found the discontinued time.
We arrived at 1:25.
At the hospital?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you find it, just kind of jump in and let us know. Otherwise, I'll turn the mic over to anyone else that may have a question, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Bacala. Ms. Ott, just as a point of clarification, would you restate the names of the two officers that you knew, the parish officers that were on the scene?
Chris Harper and Cade Nolan.
Nolan and Harper. All right. And just for clarification, is it common for unresponsive patients to remain handcuffed on the way to the hospital?
No.
All right. So you found that to be uncommon in this. This was an uncommon situation.
Uncommon to me.
Okay. No, that's fine. All right. It appears that the board is clear. I don't think we have any, unless anyone has any other questions. We thank you for your testimony. Thank you. All right. Angie Hollis, who's the investigator for Ouachita Parish. Dr. Teri O'Neill with Ouachita Parish, and Renee Smith with Union Parish. If we got three chairs, we can probably accommodate all three of you. Yeah, Ms. Smith may be in the hall. Good afternoon, ladies. I'm assuming Ms. Hollis,
Correct.
Dr. O'Neill,
Yes, sir.
and Ms. Smith?
Correct.
All right. Let's start with you, Ms. Hollis. I know all three of you are work with the coroner or the coroners. So if we would start with you, if you want to make an opening statement, you're welcome.
I don't have an, I'm just here for the subpoena, just to answer questions.
All right. How about you? Want to make it an open statement?
I do not have a statement, sir.
How about you?
I do not either.
All right. We'll start first question, Representative Marcel.
Thank you. So, Ms. Hollis, you're with Wichita?
Ouachita.
Ouachita?
Ouachita Parish.
Ouachita Parish. And what is your position there?
I'm an investigator with the coroner's office.
You're an investigator. And when did you first come in contact with Mr. Ronald Greene's body? When?
I was contacted by Glenwood Regional Medical Center to come to the hospital, to the emergency room. As far as what time that night, I do not recall.
Glenwood Medical Center?
Yes.
And so when you got there, tell me what you found.
When I arrived, there were 2 troopers. I do not recall who it was. That informed me that there was.
So y'all don't do reports?
Normally, in a situation, we do reports.
No. This is an abnormal situation?
No.
Okay, tell me, because
It was not in our jurisdiction.
Okay.
It was transferred to Union Parish.
So it's not in your jurisdiction,
Correct.
but you were called anyway.
I was called because he was at a hospital in Ouachita Parish.
Got it.
So when I arrive at the hospital,
Okay.
given the circumstances, I contact our assistant chief, who informs me to turn it over to Union Parish. I contacted Union Parish and let them know the circumstances that I was told at the hospital.
And what was that? What was the
That-
circumstance?
That Mr. Greene was involved in a motor vehicle accident. Mm-hmm. And when he arrived at the hospital, he was deceased. So whenever I contacted Union Parish, I informed them just what I was told. I did not go on scene.
Okay, so that leads me to Ms. Smith,
Yes.
right? So it was your parish where the accident happened.
The accident occurred in
Occurred in Union Parish. Okay, tell me, so you received a call from that coroner's office or from the hospital? Where did you receive your call from?
Our office, our deputy coroner, received the call from Ms. Hollis.
Okay, and were you the person that arrived on the scene?
No, ma'am.
You were not.
No, ma'am. I was not the coroner at the time.
Oh, you are the coroner.
I am the coroner now.
Okay, so you have records of what happened. Have you had an opportunity to look at those records?
Yes, I believe I've furnished a copy of the
Okay,
coroner
so-
report to your committee.
Okay, so you would not have any knowledge of who was there when they got there because you weren't there,
No, ma'am.
right? And what did y'all determine the cause of death to be?
I did not determine the cause of death.
You didn't?
No, ma'am.
Okay, who did?
I was not at the scene, nor was I handling the case.
Okay, so the coroner before you did it,
That's
right?
correct.
Yep. Okay, so what did they determine the cause of death to be?
All I have and was able to find in the file was a copy of the initial report done by the deputy coroner and a copy of the autopsy report.
And what did that autopsy report say the cause of death was?
According to the autopsy report, the cause of death was cocaine-induced agitated delirium, complicated by a motor vehicle collision, physical struggle, and inflicted head injury and restraint.
Okay, thank you. I'll let some other people.
Okay.
Thank you, Representative Marcel. Representative Bacala.
Coroner Smith, I know you inherited this case, so you're trying to fill in. There's been a couple references to the coroner who's no longer there, but also to a deputy coroner. Can you tell me who the deputy coroner was who prepared that report, or who received a call from Miss Hollis, and then who later, I guess it's the same deputy coroner who prepared that report?
The deputy coroner was Teresa Spells. She is an LPN.
Okay, and is she currently employed by Union Parish Coroner's Office?
Yes, sir. She's still employed there.
All right. I guess she just wasn't asked to be here today?
No, sir.
Is she here today?
No, sir.
Okay. Where was the autopsy conducted and by whom?
Dr. Peretti in Little Rock, Arkansas.
All right, and he's a certified pathologist, I
He's a
suppose?
forensic pathologist, yes.
Okay, and obviously for a pathologist to draw certain conclusions, it's based on, it's important that they have information, accurate information about, was it a car wreck or did somebody jump off of a building? Obviously they rely on some information. Are you familiar with the information that was provided to the pathologist in order for him to make an intelligent determination about cause of death?
No, sir, I do not know that information.
Well, I'm asking, would somebody normally, I guess, would have provided him with basic information?
I would assume, yes.
And do you know what information was provided to him?
No, sir.
You think Ms. Spells could provide that information to the committee if she was here?
I don't think she recalled.
Okay. I'm going to come back a little while. I'll let a few of y'all answer.
Just as a point of clarification, let me ask you something, Miss Smith. You do have the autopsy report with you, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. We may want to get a copy of that before you leave. Was there a supplemental report to this autopsy report?
No, sir.
So no supplemental report was done to your knowledge? No, not that. No, that's not what we're talking about. That's another report. All right. I'll come back to you on that. Representative Landry.
Yes, ma'am. I'm not sure. I think I know what report you have in front of you, and I'm sorry it's been a long day here today, and I don't have a copy of it. But I had made some notes for myself before, and I believe that's the report that talks about agitated delirium. Is that listed in the report in front of you?
The autopsy report.
Yes, correct. Did you write that?
No, ma'am.
Do you know who wrote that?
Dr. Peretti.
Peretti? Okay. Do you know what that means?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Had you seen it before or since?
Just looking at this report.
No, sorry, that term, agitated delirium, is it something you had seen before or after in another coroner report?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Just for you as well, is it something that the term agitated delirium had you seen in any other autopsy or coroner report?
I'm Teri O'Neill. I'm the coroner of Ouachita Parish, and yes, I have. It is a term that is sometimes used.
Could you tell me a little more about it? Is it something you've seen recently? Is it common? I just wasn't familiar with it.
Okay. It's not a commonly used term, but I have seen it more than once or twice. Situation that occurs when an individual is affected by a medication, drug, a substance that produces an extreme agitated condition, which would affect patients' vital signs and also mental status.
Is it something that you've used in reports before?
I have.
Okay, because I'm just learning about it, but my understanding is that it's actually quite a controversial term.
It is a controversial term, and when I do use it in a report or something that I write, I'm usually quoting a forensic pathologist.
It's coming from someone else.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. To the extent any of you know, probably not, do you know why Dr. Peretti used that term in this report? No?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Okay. Thank you. That's all for now.
Thank you. Representative Villio.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Ms. Smith, correct?
Yes.
As I appreciate it, Mr. Greene's body was transported from the morgue to Little Rock, Arkansas. Is that your understanding from the reports you've seen?
That's my understanding.
Were you employed at the coroner's office at the time of this incident and autopsy?
No, ma'am.
Does the coroner's office, to your knowledge, typically use an out-of-state pathologist for its autopsies?
Yes, ma'am. He is, my understanding, been the forensic pathologist for many years.
And he does, and all of the autopsies he performs, Dr. Peretti, he performs them in Little Rock, to your
Yes, ma'am.
understanding? Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Back to Representative Bacala, I think it is.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to circle back, Ms. Hollis, if you would. You sort of answered this, but just getting some clarity. I know you transferred all this to the Union Parish coroner, but it was kind of important, I think. What were you told when you went to the hospital? So you were at the hospital. After being called there because someone had died. When you arrived, were law enforcement officers still at the hospital?
Yes.
And you don't know who they were?
There were two there. I think one was Trooper Hollingsworth, but I couldn't tell you who the other was.
Okay.
I know faces. I don't know.
Were they both troopers?
Yes.
Okay, so it was troopers and not deputies.
Correct.
And as you, at some point, I'm sure someone, either you asked or they offered, there had to be some conversation about what happened. Is that assumption correct?
Correct.
Can you just give me what that conversation entailed as it was explained to you what had taken place?
All that I was told was that there was a chase that ensued in Ouachita Parish. They ended in Union Parish when the vehicle crashed.
Have you at any point since then seen the videos of the incident, what happened there?
You mean the aftermath? Yes.
Would you say that their description of the incident, what took place, did they include anything that remotely resembled what you saw in the videos of the aftermath of the crash?
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding.
Well, I think if we watch the videos, we see that, and I will use the term that was used in a text message, there was a violent encounter. Would you agree that there was?
After seeing the video?
Yes.
Yes, sir, I'd have to agree.
Well, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but question is, was there any mention of a struggle that would remotely resemble what you saw in that video as they explained to you what happened?
Well, no, sir, we did not get into that. It was.
But they did tell you when y'all were discussing what happened, you said they told me there was a chase and there was a car crash, but there was no mention of violent struggle I'm asking if you recall that.
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
All right. So that was not ever. Did you have an opportunity? Did you view the body or not?
I only viewed the body as far as I saw his face, and then after I spoke with Union Parish, I processed him, and he was placed in a bag, and then they provided transport.
And I'm assuming that since you made the determination that it should go back to Union Parish, that there was a determination somewhere that he had actually died in Union Parish. My assumption is if he had been alive in the ambulance ride to the hospital and subsequently passed away in Ouachita Parish, you would have had jurisdiction.
Well, not because the crash happened in Union Parish.
I'm saying, but if he had gone to the hospital and lived for 3 days and passed away, then you probably would have had some jurisdiction.
Well, we would have contacted Union Parish because the crash would have happened in Union Parish.
Okay. All right. Thank you. No more questions for now.
Thank you, Representative Bacala. All right, just see if I can get you off there. All right. Let me ask you, Ms. Smith, are you familiar with Jennifer Forsyth?
I don't believe.
All right. How about you, doctor? Are you familiar with Jennifer
Name is
Forsyth?
familiar, sir.
All right. I know you just spoke of Dr. Peretti doing the autopsy, but could you be mistaken? It could it have been Miss Forsyth that actually did the autopsy?
Are you asking me that question, sir?
Whoever can answer it.
I don't know. There's 2 signatures on the report.
All right. Because it's my understanding that Miss Forsyth is the one that actually did the autopsy on Mr. Greene.
Okay.
But I do have a question for Dr. O'Neill, and I know you talked about this agitated delirium. To the best of your knowledge, what are the characteristics of agitated delirium?
Well, generally speaking, some of them would include rapid heart rate, diaphoresis or sweating, muscle tension, combativeness in many cases, altered mental status, altered awareness of what's going on.
All right. Did you see some of the same questions that Representative Bacala asked? Did you see the video of an aftermath of Mr. Greene?
I have not, sir.
All right. I know you saw it, right? Are you familiar with agitated delirium at all?
No, sir.
All right. How about you, Ms. Smith?
No, sir, I did not.
All right. Yeah. I'm glad you spoke of combativeness. And being one of the characteristics, because I think anybody who saw that, I don't know if they would necessarily say that he was combative. But with that being said, Representative Villio.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't have any further questions.
All right. Representative Marcel.
Thank you. You said something that kind of caught my ears, Miss Hollis.
Mm-hmm.
You said, I prepared the body and then I gave it to Union Parish.
Well, when I say prepare, he's placed in a bag.
He's placed in a bag.
He's placed in a bag, and the bag is tied and sealed.
Okay, let me ask you something, because I've seen it. I just watch TV. I'm not seen it in person, and I don't want to. But they put it like a toe tag or something. Is that a part of the process? Would you have done that part before you transferred it to Union Parish?
That's part of placing
The bag, right? So you did do that part.
Correct.
Okay.
It might have been a wristband. I don't
Wristband,
recall.
right. I know they do something to tag the body to make sure that they say that this is Ronald Greene, right?
Right.
And then you put it in a bag and then you gave it to them.
Correct.
Where's your report for that? Don't y'all write reports of every patient that every patient that you come in contact with? Would you not have written a report of that, regardless of whether you was going to transfer it or not?
Typically, I do write reports, but I don't recall if I wrote one or not.
So
There's not one located. But so if they're out of parish or if they're not our jurisdiction, there are cases that reports are not written.
You think that's a good practice?
Probably not.
Pardon me?
I don't know. Probably, maybe not.
Maybe not. And you said typically.
Typically.
So what was not so typical about this situation?
No, typically I do write reports.
No. I got it.
I do not recall that I did or did not write one. It's been 3 years ago. I've had a lot of cases since then.
You don't recall?
I do not recall.
Okay. But what is your policy on when you deal with a body? Is there a standard or policy that you typically follow? Is there one?
What do you mean as far as?
In your office, if you contact a body for any reason, whether it's a crash or gunshot or whatever, if you come in contact with that body, what is the policy of your office? Is it to write a report, regardless of whether you're getting ready to send it to somebody? What is your normal? I know y'all got policies, right? What's the policy and procedure? What's normal?
A report is normal. A report is written.
Okay.
If we keep the body, if we are, whether we're releasing, whether we take or we're taking for autopsy, a report is written.
But you can't find one.
On Mr. Greene,
Right.
from what I understand, no.
From what you understand, they can't find that one. Okay, thank you.
All right, so let's follow up with that. I'm Dr. O'Neill. I mean, were you the coroner at the time?
Yes, sir, I was.
At the time of Mr. Greene's death, right? And so, as Representative Marcel said, I'm assuming you do have a policy in place on how to process and handle deceased
Yes, sir.
people, right? And
We do.
all right, with that policy, I mean, somewhere within that policy, would there be something that says that a report is commonly written?
Yes, sir.
All right. And in this case, you can't find a.
No, sir.
Policy.
We have searched for both paper and electronic records and can find none, which is unusual. And we have searched diligently, went back through 3 different years worth of stored paper records in addition to searching our computer database, and we've been unable to locate the report at all. I have no explanation.
Would you
for
have
it.
put his name in the database? Oh, let me ask you this: would it have been a common practice for you to put his name within somewhere in your database?
Yes, sir. Ordinarily, the investigators complete a report on their laptops and then send it into our system. Any other additional information, papers, would then be filed, such as documentation of personal effects or anything of that nature would be filed in a paper file. And later on, it would be uploaded into the system and scanned.
So even in this instance, there's no record. I mean, if he had like a chain or a watch or a bracelet or anything, you don't even have any record of, no inventory of what he had or whatever happened to it.
No, sir, we do not.
And that's, I'm going to use your words, that's unusual.
Unusual.
Can we say highly unusual?
Yes, sir.
And here's the thing that disturbs me. I mean, I talked to Miss Ott. I mean, you heard her testimony just for a second. And we talked about just the probes and him being, Mr. Greene being unconscious. And she said that was very uncommon. And, you know, so much around this case, we're finding a pattern of something being uncommon, something being unusual. And I'm not saying anything on your department, so I don't want to necessarily insinuate that, but you know, we started off this committee talking about whether or not there was a cover up, and people debating whether there was a cover up. I mean, there's just so many things that are just that is out of practice with this case. I just find it disturbing.
Yes, sir.
Representative Villio.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Just so I can get a clarification, Ms. Hollis, you were an investigator with the Ouachita Parish Coroner's Office at the time of this incident, correct?
Correct.
And you remain so?
Correct.
And Miss O'Neill, you were the coroner at the time for
That is
Ouachita?
correct.
Okay. And you remain so?
Yes, ma'am.
And then Miss Smith, you were not the coroner at the time, correct?
No, ma'am.
And you did not work there at the time, am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I had all that correct. For Miss O'Neill, has any other agency, investigating agency, asked for any report from your office to your knowledge?
I was unaware that a report had been requested until this came up and we started looking for the report and it could not be found. I was advised by my chief investigator that he had looked for a report, and I'm sorry I can't give you the date, but was unable to locate it at that time.
And
So
the
there had
chief
already been a search.
investigator being who?
Warren Lee.
Warren Lee.
Yes, ma'am.
And was Mr. Lee an investigator at the time of this incident?
He was.
Okay. And do you remember if he was requested that report this year, last year? And
Sorry, I don't recall.
you don't. Do you recall when you had that conversation with him?
Since I received the request for information, I forwarded it to him to send the report ahead of my testimony as it was requested. And at that time, I found out there was no report.
And he indicated to you at that time that he had previously looked for a report and could not find it.
Correct.
What about any notes, anything? There's absolutely nothing.
We find nothing, which is
Highly unusual.
highly unusual. I was wondering if I might have permission to address a procedural point. There was a question about whose jurisdiction and why. Generally speaking, when there is a decedent, if they die of natural causes or an illness, that goes back to the jurisdiction where they are usually domiciled. If there is an injury, regardless of where the decedent dies or how long it is from the time of injury, that goes back to the jurisdiction where the accident occurred. So regardless of whether Mr. Greene would have survived to reach Glenwood or another trauma center, and no matter how long he survived after the accident, the jurisdiction for this case would have gone back to the parish where the accident occurred.
Ms. O'Neill, how many employees do you have at the Ouachita Parish Coroner's Office?
21, I think, right now.
Okay. And of the 21 employees, how are the reports stored, and who would have access to those reports?
The reports are stored electronically, and as I said, we also have some paper charts that have things like sometimes photographs or the property sheets that are filed before they're scanned, but they go into our computer system.
Now, in this case, would you have had photographs of Mr. Greene as well?
No.
Okay. And who of the 21 employees would have access to the reports?
The reports are stored in our database, and myself, my chief investigator, my assistant chief investigator, and the office manager, I believe the investigators can access the reports that they're working on.
Is there any type of audit trail, or has one been done to see whether there was a report and then it was deleted, or that there was no report whatsoever?
We have not had the opportunity to do that yet, but I feel that's appropriate.
And is someone employed with the coroner's office who can do that, or is that have you requested anybody to do that?
I will request someone outside our organization to do that.
Would appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, Representative Landry.
Sorry not to belabor this point. Again, it's been a long day. But back to the report from the Arkansas pathologist. And is this someone or a procedure that happens somewhat regularly when you deal with a pathologist or someone in Arkansas? Both of you.
Okay. Yes, we've used Dr. Peretti for more than a decade now from Ouachita Parish, and several of the other surrounding jurisdictions began to send their cases there as well. There were a number of reasons that we elected to use him. At the time, the forensic pathologist that was closest to us was in Bossier City. He was very, very busy, and we waited a long time for results. We had the opportunity to work with Dr. Peretti, and he's done very well for us. Dr. Forsyth is one of his colleagues and does some of the autopsies there as well.
Okay. And I'm sorry if you answer this in some way, but you know, when they get involved here, do they call you, either of you, with questions? Like, how is the interaction, or what is the interaction with the Arkansas pathologist and your offices?
Generally speaking, we get preliminary information back if there's anything unusual while the driver is bringing the decedent back to our jurisdiction. We sometimes get phone calls directly from Dr. Peretti. At other times, we will have an autopsy report within a few days. If he has any questions, he calls and asks. Generally, he will call the investigator direct if he knows which one it was. Otherwise, he'll call the chief investigator and have them track it down and get whatever information he needs.
Is that similar for you?
I've only had personal contact with Dr. Peretti on possibly 2 or 3 cases since I've taken over as coroner. Rarely does he call. He relies on a copy of the initial report that is public record to look at, or verbal speaking with whoever the investigator is.
So his final report, he already has something from you, an initial or a temporary or Is there a specific term for your initial report?
It's just the
initial report.
Yeah,
And that comes not from you, but from one of your investigators,
whoever worked the case. Yes.
and you as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Landry. Quick question, and I'm just following up. I know Representative Video said that both of you were employed in your current positions at the time of Mr. Greene's death, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he said you weren't, right?
That's correct.
All right. So who was the coroner at the time of Mr. Greene's death, if you know?
Miss Abby Moon.
Abby Moon. And where's Ms. Moon now?
I'm not allowed to speak that due to HIPAA rules.
Okay. No problem. Okay. No problem. Thank you. Representative Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and apologies, I don't have the autopsy report in front of me. The term that was used, did I hear excited delirium, or was that the term used earlier?
Agitated.
Agitated delirium. What's the difference between agitated delirium and postural asphyxiation?
I have no idea. I'm not a physician.
Okay.
You might want to direct that.
No, any one of you that can answer the question.
Postural asphyxiation is a physical condition that occurs when an individual is placed in a position and can't adequately maintain their airway or exchange air appropriately. Can also, to some extent, be a constricting situation where blood supply can be impaired to the brain. It is I'll try and describe differences. The individual, in reacting to being asphyxiated, would exhibit abnormal vital signs and altered mental status as well.
Okay.
Did I get your question right, sir?
I'll take your word for it.
Okay. Generally, they would not be; those terms would not be used interchangeably.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No problem. Representative Bacala.
Thank you. Coroner Smith, it sounds like Teresa Spell, you mentioned earlier, pretty much handled this case. She's the key, I think, to what happened, et cetera, at that time within your office. Have you had an opportunity to speak to Ms. Spell at any length about this?
Yes, sir.
And did she convey to you that she had been contacted by Angie Hollis to take over the case?
That is correct.
Did she tell you that she had an opportunity to speak to any law enforcement officers about what had happened?
She did not.
Did she speak to making a report or requesting or facilitating the autopsy by Dr. Paretti?
No, she did not.
What exactly did she do?
I believe she did contact her supervisor at the time, the coroner, Abby Moon, and spoke with her about it.
So we think that Abby Moon, I guess that was the previous coroner, you think Abby Moon handled all the details about?
I can only assume, sir. I'm not aware.
You mentioned an initial report, or initial report was mentioned as being something that would have been provided to Mr. Paretti. Do you have a copy of that initial report, the exact information that was provided to Mr. Paretti?
Yes, sir. I've supplied that to the committee.
And that is that this Union Parish, is that this report?
That's correct.
So this is the entirety of the information that was provided to Dr. Paretti on which he based his autopsy?
I can only assume that's the entirety.
All right, and it references received a call from Angie. I'm supposing that is Angie Hollis, Miss Hollis. Received a call from Angie with OPCO to report a death of a Ouachita Parish resident. Death occurred after being involved in a motor vehicle crash in Crossroads and being transported to the hospital, I guess. Pafford ambulance was in transit with decedent when he went into cardiac arrest and life-saving measures, yada yada, pronounced dead by the ER physician. We think this is what was provided to Dr. Paretti.
I could not be for sure about that, sir. I would not say that definitely that's what was provided. I can only assume that. Information on there is exactly what she recalled of the incident and contacted Ms. Moon in reference to it and was advised to, yes, get an autopsy done.
And it references transported by Raymond
That's correct.
to or from morgue to Little Rock. Okay, so this references this transportation of Ronald Greene for an autopsy to be performed.
That's correct.
Would you agree that? And look, I'm not blaming anybody. No, they can't provide. They can't say what they don't know. All right. So I'm not suggesting anything wrong. But if this is the extent of information that Miss Spell had at her disposal, if this is all she knew was a motor vehicle crash, and he died, do you think that's all she knew?
I think that's all she knew.
And,
or she would have written something else.
Okay, and so I guess the conclusion would be that if Dr. Paretti, your pathologist, had such limited information, it would have been hard for him to make an accurate conclusion as to the cause of, not the cause of death, but for the manner of death. Am I using the right terms?
Mm-hmm.
Doctor?
If I may, it would be very uncommon for the patient, or the victim rather, not to be sent with records from the emergency department as well.
Well, okay, and I don't know that we have those. That would have been information that you guys would have either sent, and I doubt you'd have sent it. I'm assuming that would have required the Union Parish Coroner's Office to request the ER records, or I don't know what arrangement you have if Dr. Paretti would typically request those on his own, or he just acted upon the information which was at his fingertips, which would have been this very, very, I guess, incomplete piece, right? Okay, has Teresa Spell, and again, I'm trying to see if there's anything that, I think we're probably going to need to talk to Teresa at some point in time, certainly not pointing fingers, just trying to get an accurate picture. Do you think Teresa ever talked to the law enforcement officers who were on the scene, or she simply took, Angie Hollis called her and said there's been an accident, somebody's dead, and that's as far as Teresa went, as far as
to my knowledge, she never spoke with anyone from law enforcement.
So to your knowledge, the only person she ever spoke to was Angie Hollis.
That's correct. And
Angie, to the best of your knowledge, the only thing you told her was, I don't want to put words in your mouth, repeat what you recall telling Teresa Spells.
I honestly could not give you verbatim what I told her. That's
Best
been
guess.
3 years ago.
Best guess.
Best guess is what I was told by the troopers.
And that's what's reflected in this report. And in this report, I will note that it is submitted by Teresa Spells, and she says PNC1-2. So what does that mean?
She's a practical nurse.
Okay, so Teresa Spells and the practical nurse said this is comments concerning death, and that's the extent of her comments concerning the death, which she would have provided to Dr. Paretti.
Yes, sir.
Would we agree? And okay, I will. That's all for now. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Bacala. Look, just for a moment there, Ms. Smith, I know we had subpoenaed the report. I think some members want to take a look at it, and when we finish your testimony, I want to be able to excuse you. But we won't be able to excuse you without having a look, just because they may have some questions. If you just hand the report, let him make some copies right quick, and then, so that way when we finish, we can. All right, well, that was a question from Representative Bacala. He asked, was there more than one autopsy done? And I think
Not to my knowledge.
I think there might have been. I think the attorneys may have done a separate autopsy on this, but I'm not sure about that. So don't hold me to that. Let me ask you though, Ms. Smith, while I have you, because I know you said Abby Moon, and so I did a quick search. Would that be the same Abby Albritton Moon?
Yes.
Okay, and so And I'm not saying I don't want you to violate any HIPAA violations. So I'm just doing what I did in a Google search and found from the Ruston Daily Ledger. Is that the same individual that was arrested on drug counts?
Yes.
Okay. If you know, did that happen while she still served in her capacity as coroner?
No.
Okay, that was afterwards. She had already been, well, I'm not going to say removed. I don't know if she was removed or not, but she was no longer coroner at that time, correct?
Correct.
All right. All right. Representative Villio.
Miss O'Neill, and I apologize if someone has asked this question and I didn't realize it or hear the answer. In the case of agitated delirium, are there physical manifestations on the deceased body from which a pathologist can determine that, or is that determination, does that come from information provided prior to death, by someone prior to the death?
In order to get a complete answer to that, you need to ask a forensic pathologist. I am unaware of any external signs. I do know that there might be internal signs based on internal examination during an autopsy.
And that's what I was wondering, if that was the case.
It's possible that there might be some evidence of increased stress or extreme high blood pressure or something of that nature, but I couldn't address the details. I'm sorry.
That's okay. And Ms. Smith or anybody, do y'all have any information on that?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right. I got you. I think I'll take care of you, Deb. All right. So look, right now the board is clear. So what I want to do, rather than getting into the testimony from the state troopers right now, we're going to take a quick 5-minute recess. That'll give them time to, because if we get into their testimony and it goes over, I don't want you guys to have to wait another hour just if we may not have any other questions for you. But in order for me to be able to excuse you, just give us a 5-minute recess. Let us look over the documents, and then we'll come right back. If there are no other questions, you guys will be free to go. If not, then we may have a few other questions. All right? All right, we'll go back on the record. I think we have a few more questions for you based on this. Representative Villio.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Coroner Smith.
Hold on 1 second. I hit the wrong one. Mandy, did you have your light on first?
She can go first.
All right.
Thank you.
Representative Villio, go ahead.
Coroner Smith, it is clear from the autopsy report, whether it be from Jennifer Forsyth or Frank Peretti, that the injuries found were inconsistent with a motor vehicle collision and most consistent with multiple impact sites from a blunt object. I don't see a date on this autopsy report. Am I missing something, or do you know what the date of the autopsy was?
The date of the examination was May the 10th, 2019. It's on the first page at the top right.
It sure is. So the body was received in Arkansas the same day?
In all probability, yes, ma'am. I can't say that for sure, but in all probability.
That's why when I saw the May 10th, 2019, I didn't realize it said date of examination. I knew that was the date of the incident.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Representative, hold on. Representative Landry.
Yes. Again, thanks for bringing this, and I'm sorry if we're asking questions that you weren't there for, but either of you may be able to shed some light. So I'm on page 2 of it, under the opinion that it says, according to investigative reports provided by the Union Parish Coroner's Office. Is that do one of y'all have that 2-page report with handwriting? I'm not sure if you brought that as well, ma'am, the 2-page.
Yes, ma'am.
You brought that with you as well? Okay, so is that the investigative report that is being referred to here?
I have no idea. It's the only investigative report that I could find in my files.
Okay, so you don't know if that's the one that's being referenced here. Okay. And then the next sentence, verbal reports provided by the Louisiana State Police indicated, etc. Few questions. Do either of you have knowledge that these Arkansas investigators, do they use verbal communications to write their reports?
Go ahead.
That would not be uncommon. If they have questions, not only do they sometimes call my investigators or my chief or myself, they have been known to contact the detectives or law enforcement that might have been at the scene so they can get additional information.
Okay. Okay, we'll have to find out who did. No written incident report was provided. So in these sentences in context, I'm trying to figure it out, where it says no written incident report was provided. I'm thinking that's referring to the state police in the preceding sentence. Is that how you read that?
I would assume, yes, ma'am.
That there was nothing written from state police. Okay. And if you... is it also normal or abnormal to, if you know, for them not to receive emergency services medical records? The last paragraph, no emergency services medical records were provided to the Arkansas pathologist. Is that something you ever deal with?
It's not uncommon for the EMS reports not to be completed before they leave the hospital because they're trying to get back to their jurisdiction or going to another call. So sometimes those are available later, and they are provided to the forensic pathologist if they request it.
Okay. And Rep. Villio commented that this report, it was actually dated the same day as the incident, so it seems there was less than a 24-hour turnaround. Is that amount of turnaround time common?
Yes.
It is? Okay. I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Landry. Representative Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at the autopsy report that was just passed out to the committee dated May 10th, 2019, but I just wanted to put this on the record, and I'm happy to submit this article for the record. But I'm looking at an article from National Public Radio that's dated November 2nd, 2021, And it seems as though a subsequent autopsy was ordered by the FBI. I don't know how we get a copy of that autopsy. But I asked earlier about this term, agitated delirium. And one thing that this article clearly notes is that in the new autopsy, agitated delirium was removed from cause of death. I don't know how we get our hands on that new autopsy or the supplemental autopsy.
We'll make a request.
But if we can make every effort to try to get our hands on that, I think that would be extremely helpful. I still have my, I asked about this agitated delirium versus asphyxiation earlier, and I'm no medical professional, but I have some questions in my head. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Representative Hughes. Representative Bacala.
Covered.
Covered it. Representative Marcel.
I'm sorry, I may have missed it because I was out when you guys started talking, but the no written incident report was provided despite request. Is that normal for a pathologist to request a written report and not receive it? That's normal.
It's normal for him to request it.
But it's specific. I've never really seen this in a report because it says despite request. It's like he wanted to bring attention to it. Would you agree? Because normally, I mean, if it was just a no incident report was provided, he just stopped, right? But when he says despite request, and there's S on request, so that means it was multiple requests in my head, right? Is that normal practice? I'm going to ask you because how long have you been the coroner, ma'am?
2 years.
2 years. I'm going to ask you, how long have you been a coroner?
23 years.
23 years. Okay. Well, I know you're a doctor, not disparaging anything about you. Can you help me with this, please?
It is not uncommon for the forensic pathologist to request information from a variety of agencies. Generally speaking, they get it.
But we specifically talking about an incident report, not just some general information that they wanted to know. He was specific about what he was requesting, a written incident report, which is probably normal for this type of report. Would you agree?
I would suspect so, but that's not my agency, so I can't exactly address their policy.
I'm not talking about their policy.
Okay.
Under normal circumstances, if would you agree that would you have done a written incident report and sent it to the pathologist?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. That would have been a normal procedure. And then it says no emergency services medical records were provided. So there's multiple things that weren't provided.
As I just mentioned a minute ago, the EMS report frequently is not ready at the time because EMS has to move on and take care of other emergencies. And in many instances, their records are not available until a later day.
Okay, and having said that, would not there be a supplemental report once you receive that? Wouldn't you attach that? Have you ever seen that?
I have seen supplemental reports.
Right. Once you get the information that you need to make the further determination or to kind of clear up your report, wouldn't you say that if they later received it, do you know, and I know this is not your parish, do you know whether or not a supplemental report was done, ma'am?
Ma'am, what you have is all I found.
That's all you found? I keep hearing that. That's all I found. There was no record.
Let me explain.
Okay, explain. Thank you.
Our records are not automated.
No.
Any reports coming in later may have been misfiled. They may have been placed in another file, not dated at the same
May have been
time.
removed. Could have, right?
Not likely.
Not likely?
No, ma'am.
Really?
Not removed.
Well, why would you say that? That could have been one of the things that could have happened. Is that impossible?
No, not impossible.
Okay, then that could have been one of them. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Representative Marcel. So I guess this would be for Dr. O'Neill. Dr. O'Neill, I'm assuming you're familiar with revised statute 135716.
I don't know which one that is, sir.
That's all right. You know what? And I apologize because sometimes when we go by numbers, people even ask us for house bills here, and I don't even know them all by number. So
I don't know the statute either.
no, I'm going to get there. So look, listening to all this testimony, you would agree that that Ronald Greene died under some suspicious circumstances, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I'm trying to find out whether it was Miss Moon's office, because I'm not going to put that on you, Miss Smith, or your office that ordered the cremation of Mr. Greene's body. Who would have been responsible for that?
That would have been Miss Moon.
That would be Miss Moon. So let me just go ahead and read it for the sake of the membership here. And it talks about cremation of bodies. It says if the cremation of a body is requested, the funeral director shall immediately notify the coroner who has jurisdiction in the death. That's part A. Part B says if after necessary investigation the coroner is satisfied that there are no suspicious circumstances surrounding the death, he shall issue, or in this case she shall issue a permit for cremation. C says if the investigation reveals suspicious circumstances or a reasonable probability of a commission of a crime, the coroner shall deny the permit, and after completion of the coroner's investigation, he may issue a permit for for cremation. So look, all the unusuals, the uncommons, just the things we've heard here today, either one of you can answer. Do you think it was proper to issue a permit for cremation in this circumstance?
I would not have issued one, sir.
All right.
Nor would I.
All right. All right. That is good to know. Thank you so much. Representative Villio.
Thank you. Just for clarification, Coroner Smith, the autopsy was performed on May 10th, 2019. That doesn't mean the report was prepared on that date, correct?
That's correct.
So when it indicates despite requests, one would not think that the report was prepared on the same day, but rather sometime thereafter, where the pathologist may have been requesting reports before he or she finalized the report. Is that correct?
That could be possible, yes.
Thank you.
All right. I think the board is clear. All right, Representative Bacala, we on this. You wanted to implement this 3-minute rule. All right, go for it.
I'll make it a 60-second question. As I read the autopsy report, it seems like the most significant injury was the 0.4 centimeter laceration to the ascending aorta. Is that how y'all read this, or have y'all reviewed it?
I have not seen the report.
We have superficial. Okay, well, thank you. I would ask. I don't know, ma'am. I was hoping the doctor could answer the question, but that's it. Thank you, ma'am.
No problem. Thank you, Representative Bacala. All right, the board is clear. I thank you, ladies, for your testimony, and I think you're free to leave. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, we will call up our last 3 witnesses: Lieutenant Colonel Chavez Cammon with Louisiana State Police, Lieutenant Colonel Kenny VanBuren with Louisiana State Police, and retired Captain Mark Richards, Louisiana State Police. And as the witnesses before, if any of you have opening statements that you wish to make, you're certainly welcome to do it. Just be reminded, make them within 3 minutes. Whoever wants to go first.
I'll definitely go first. Chavez Cammon, Louisiana State Police. I'm currently the Deputy Superintendent over Patrol. I'll start my opening statements by just giving you a sentence that I've been pondering and have been keeping close to my heart. But I use this a lot in my leadership role now, and I talk to our commanders about changing hearts and touching lives. Changing hearts and touching lives. Think about that for a moment. And I start off by saying thank you, committee members, for the invitation to come today and address you. I'm here today to address questions in reference to my role, duties, and knowledge of the tragic death of Mr. Ronald Greene. Also, as a humbled, dedicated, and passionate leader, I would like to address any concerns lodged against my name, my character, or any questions or information you may have me to answer today. Over the years, I've gained a lot of respect for this thing called leadership. What I've learned is this: if you spend your time responding to every statement said about you, chances are you will never spend a day leading, maintaining, retaining, or implementing the meaningful change and or building on what should be well established in the hearts and minds of every police officer who took the oath to protect and serve. And I put emphasis on what should be well established. And this part for me hits home because as a student of leadership, leaders should be very intentional about the expectations of every officer or trooper who wear this badge. Now, while I'm here today to speak about those concerns, and I'll tell you this, I completely understand that there are many, many questions that need to be answered. Let me be clear, my testimony today is not about me. It is my hope and prayer that I can help to answer questions that you as a committee, the Greene family, Ms. Mona Harden, and the community so rightfully deserve. Also, for the many Department of Public Safety commission and civilian employees who come to work every day doing the right thing for the right reason, they too have asked many questions. Most importantly, I hope sooner rather than later that Ms. Mona Harden and the Greene family will get all the answers and that justice will be properly served. In my opinion, as a 23-year member of this law enforcement profession, I am deeply saddened and disturbed by everything that we have seen so far regarding those officers, the officers who were on the scene on the night of, or the morning of May 10th, 2019 with Mr. Greene. Those who completely disregarded their training as well as their oath, as we as troopers and public safety servants raised our hand and affirmed. We affirmed that we will support the Constitution and laws of the United States, as well as the Constitution and laws of the state of Louisiana. We all said that we will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform the duties incumbent upon us as police officers, according to the best of our abilities and understanding, so help us God. As a senior member of Louisiana State Police Agency, I want to apologize to the Greene family. I want to apologize to Ms. Mona Harden. I want to apologize because we really shouldn't even be here today. I firmly believe that every law enforcement officer who acted in a careless and reckless manner regarding the death of Mr. Greene should be held accountable. To have a complete disregard for the sanity of life is unacceptable. And if you can hear my voice today, please hear me, because I want you to know that you have my complete commitment. And I will ensure to you that we are working every day now to make sure our troopers and our personnel are trained and that they're educated and understand and have a heart for the people for which we serve. Finally, committee members, as I begin my opening statement with these words: changing hearts, touching lives. If I could for one moment before my time runs out, I want to address you as a father. It hurts and it's frustrating to explain to my son, who has seen the same video footages that this whole world has seen, of troopers who wear the same uniform that his daddy wears. And I have to explain to him why same officers that wear my uniform, the uniform that we all wear, are acting in the manner that they did. I cannot even imagine the pain the family is feeling, the Greene family is feeling. I can't imagine the pain. But we have to start changing lives and changing hearts and touching lives. And if we do that, I believe we would not be here again. I pray that we won't be. And that concludes my opening statement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Co-Chair Jordan and the rest of the panel. My name is Kenny VanBuren, and I'm Deputy Superintendent for the Bureau of Investigations, Louisiana State Police. And I've been employed with the Louisiana State Police for 32 years with a total of 35 years of law enforcement service. I've served in several capacities to include uniform patrol, narcotics, our insurance fraud unit, criminal intelligence detectives, and also our gaming enforcement division. I will try to be brief with regards to my opening statement. If y'all would oblige me to do so, and I'll try to be respectful of the 3 minutes. First, I'd like to say that I've heard, that some of the questions posed by this body is they're tough, and certainly I understand that perception. But I do believe this. I believe in part that the questions are only tough when they make you feel uncomfortable, or they're only tough when you don't want to say I don't know. And I can tell you this: we don't know everything. This is one of the most unusual situations I've seen in 35 years. There's nothing normal about this. And so we all understand the reasons that we're here anchored to a very horrible situation that occurred before, by and large, our current executive staff had any influential decision-making authority relating to the beating death of Mr. Ronald Greene. And as for me, at the time I was a captain in our agency's gaming enforcement division, but today, I do not offer that as an excuse not to answer your questions. You deserve more respect than that. I will not hide behind ongoing investigations. If you ask me a question, if I know the answer, I'm going to give it to you. If I tell you that I don't know, it's because I honestly just don't know. If I tell you I can't remember, it's because I can't remember, and it's for no other reason. So you've heard it said that we usually don't comment or offer our beliefs or opinion when it comes to cases before they've been adjudicated, but yet we're here. I can say this, and I think we'll all agree, based on what we have not seen, there has been no indictments, there's been no arrest, so therefore there are no pending adjudications. And so in my view, once again, if you ask the question and I know the answer, I'm going to give it to you. So honestly, I'm left mystified that there have been no indictments or arrests, to be quite honest, in the beating death of Mr. Greene. Of course, during the last hearing, I heard DA John Belton mention that an agreement had been reached with the U.S. Department of Justice to press forward with pursuing criminal charges at the state level, which was very much pleasing to hear that. And obviously, none of us can predict the outcome of a grand jury, should there be one, but I'm hopeful that Mr. Belton will be able to reach an appropriate result. So today I commit to you that I'll do my very best to maybe, just maybe, piece together this shattered glass of moral rightness, is what I call it. But let me be clear. Look, I don't like being here any more than anybody else, given the circumstances. Being forced to deal with the ruins left behind by those who chose to defile our agency and our agency's core values. So we, all of us, are being forced to deal with today should have been addressed a long time ago. It should have been. We've been dealing with this for 3 long years, starting May 10th of 2019, and that, to me, is unacceptable. I don't even have the words to adequately describe what I've seen and what I've learned about how Mr. Greene was killed. It's tragic, it's heartbreaking, it's disturbing, horrendous, and for me, none of these descriptives adequately describe what we all have seen and what I personally feel. I've heard testimony where some have been reluctant to say Mr. Greene was beaten to death by state troopers. And as much as it pains me to say that he was beaten to death by troopers, what I feel is nothing in comparison to the pain that I sense Ms. Horton and the rest of the Greene family are experiencing and have been experiencing since 2019. So in my view, Mr. Greene should not have died on the side of the road. Not in the manner that he died, not like that. 2 meetings ago, Sergeant Scott Davis, our agency's use of force expert, who courageously set before you, he characterized, and I quote, he said what he saw was torture and murder. That's what he said. And so hearing those words was shocking. And the words weren't shocking because he said what he said, but rather because it caused me to pause. And it allowed me for a very pensive moment of reflection, which also provided me an articulable description of what I struggled to define for myself: torture and murder. So this afternoon, as I sit before you, I want you to know that I'm not one of those who are going to try to hide behind the response of claiming ongoing investigations. I'm not going to do that. I understand, and I am too sensitive to the concerns regarding saying something that could potentially prejudice a process or could be used in an attempt to impeach someone's testimony in a future proceeding. But I can tell you this, the state police does not have an active or ongoing criminal investigation. Now, I can't speak to what the federal government is doing. I have no idea. You have heard the same things that I've heard, so I can't speak to those issues. Lots of attention has been given to Lieutenant Clary's body-worn camera video, the fact that or what's been alleged that he hid the video. But I'll submit to you that isn't even remotely accurate. The video was properly labeled and uploaded to evidence.com. It's a video repository on the same morning of Mr. Greene's death. And maybe, just maybe on our part, Criminal Investigation Division, that maybe we just didn't do a good job at looking for it, but it was there. So, however, in my view, there's a much larger concern, and I'll be brief, there was a very critical conversation, I believe, and Albert Paxton mentioned this a couple sessions ago. And Sergeant Paxton made this point. He said that upon Lieutenant Clary's arrival, Hollingsworth made the statement, "I was going to sit him up, but I didn't want him spitting blood all over us." And Clary's response, "Well, don't do that. Don't do that." And so given that exchange and the fact that they left him on his stomach while pressing against his back, I venture to say anybody of any reasonable sensibility would conclude that postural positional asphyxia likely played a part. So I heard y'all talking about that earlier, and I think we have to be sensitive to that. So with that, I'll stop.
All right, and
I'll
we
open up for questions.
may have some questions on that. Captain Richards, and look, and I know you guys.
I don't have a prepared statement, sir.
That's fine. I know y'all got a lot to get off your chest, so I'm trying to be a little liberal with the time. But so no statement from you at all,
Sir.
All right, we're going to go to questions. Representative Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for being here today. Lieutenant Colonel Cammon, what was your role at the time of the Ronald Greene, at the time Mr. Greene was murdered?
Thank you for that question, Representative Hughes. At the time, on May 10th, 2019, I was the commander of over internal affairs.
Internal affairs. And Lieutenant Colonel VanBuren, what was your role at that time?
I was the captain of our gaming enforcement division.
Okay. I want to turn to the crash report for just a minute, and given your current capacity, Lieutenant Colonel Cammon, or any of you guys, maybe you can help me out. I don't know if you have a copy of it in front of you, but I want to start with page 1. So some of the words on our report is blurry. On the first page, I see 2 boxes checked. I can make out fatality, but the box above fatality, what box is that? Because we can't make it out on our paper.
Give me a moment. Let's see if I can grab that report.
Right here. I can't make it out on my paper.
You're on the first page, sir?
No, yes, page 1.
My glasses. I'm too old.
Photos made.
Okay, so were the fatality boxes checked?
Yeah, the box above that.
Photos made.
What does that mean?
It means that there were photos obtained from that crash scene.
Okay. I noticed that this report is dated May 10th, 2019. I also, of course, have a copy. We all have a copy of the text message that Colonel Reeves sent to the governor. And in that text message, he says, quote, "But a violent, lengthy struggle took place. After some struggling with the suspect, troopers were joined by a Union Parish deputy," et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now when I turn to the narrative of the crash report, I'm going to page 5. Unless I'm missing something, there is no reference to any type of struggle in this crash report.
No, it's not in the report, sir. It's not documented in the narrative of this crash report.
Is that? So walk me through what's supposed to be captioned in a crash report.
Yeah, this crash report is covering the incident, circumstances involving how the crash occurred.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I've been hearing the term since sitting here, unusual, and not typical. I can tell you, I can't speak to how the trooper, Corey York, documented it here, but I would tell you if I arrived on the scene and got or learned of information that a use of force occurred, because I believe that's important documentation, I would have listed that in my narrative here. In my opinion, I would have.
Yeah, I just don't understand. The death is classified as a fatality. I mean, it's clearly, documented as a fatality. Colonel Reeves clearly referenced the struggle in his communication to the governor, but there's no reference to the struggle in this crash report. And I don't know if that's just how troopers are trained or if it was intentionally left out. But that I just find that strange on my end.
Now, Representative Hughes, and if I can add, again, like I said, I can't speak to why the Trooper York listed or documented it as such. However, I can tell you that if that was a scene that I was responsible for investigating the crash, I know that we had CI, our Criminal Investigative Division, coming out, but that's also a key note or point that I would have noted in this crash report.
Okay. No, the last thing, and then I yield, and I might have to come back a little later. But quote, Lieutenant Todd Walden with OPSO. I'm assuming that's Ouachita Parish Sheriff's Office. Contacted a friend of the family who notified an aunt. Why did Ouachita Parish notify a friend of the family, and why wasn't the immediate family contacted?
Yeah, and again, I can speak to what I've known or learned about since this case has evolved. What I have heard or learned about was that there were attempts to reach family members, but they could not. And from what I understand, Lieutenant Todd Walden here was aware of the family or a family member and was able to make contact with the aunt. If I'm not mistaken, and I wouldn't hold me to it, but I believe it was documented somewhere that attempts were made to contact. And every fatality that we work, let me just say this. We go through every length and every effort to notify. Our personnel will do that. But there are many times, too, where we use the resources of those other agencies that may have relationships, that may know a family member. In this case, it appears as though that they documented a lieutenant that reached out to the aunt.
Okay. That's all for now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Marcel.
Thank you. Lieutenant Colonel Chavez,
Yes, ma'am.
you are now in what position?
I'm now the Deputy Superintendent of Patrol.
Deputy Superintendent. But at the time of Ronald Greene's death, you were
I was the captain over internal affairs.
captain over internal affairs. So walk me through this. When did you become aware of the video of Ronald Greene's death? Can you tell me that?
I'm glad you asked that question. And as I hope we can note, I submitted some documents to the committee prior to arriving that cleared. I've heard that being said or mentioned that I was over internal affairs and had complete knowledge.
I don't have but a short time.
Okay.
When were you made aware of the video and by whom? Because we had some people to come here and testify, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Sergeant Brown, I think it was, with the use of force expert.
I got
Davis. Scott Davis. I'm sorry, Scott Davis.
Yes, ma'am. I got the complete briefing when I was appointed in this position. I believe it was sometime in April.
Appointed in which position? The new position?
Yes, ma'am.
So when you were over internal affairs.
Can I explain that?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So when you were over internal affairs, you did not speak with Scott Brown or Scott Davis. What's his name? Scott Davis or Brown? Sergeant, about the video. That's the question.
No, ma'am.
You did not. So they didn't. The person that came and testified to us, that's the use of force expert. Who would that have been?
Scott Davis, Sergeant Scott Davis.
Sergeant Scott Davis. I keep calling him Scott Brown, but Scott Davis, right? So if he said to us that he showed you the video, and that's the person that I think you referenced her, that's called it torture and murder. Is that accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you gave us a statement and you said you were so sorry, for, and I'm not saying you're not. Do you think it was torture and murder? Would you agree with him?
You heard my statement, ma'am. I would totally agree with him.
You totally agree with that it was torture and murder. Okay. So then if you were to have seen this video at that time when you first saw it, were you in internal affairs at that time?
No, ma'am.
You weren't.
No,
So you
ma'am.
never saw it. So internal affairs got this when?
It's documented. I believe Internal Affairs received the first case regarding Ronald Greene in August of 2020.
2020. So the first time you saw it, it was not when you were in internal affairs. So you didn't have any opportunity to turn it over to anyone else.
No, ma'am. When I was in Internal Affairs, I was not briefed or given any indication or any information regarding Ronald Greene, and I submitted that in the paperwork that I've already provided the committee.
Okay. So then if someone comes to that table and says that you did, then they were lying, correct?
Yes, ma'am. I've provided that information to you already.
I don't have it. Okay. So you telling me something that they haven't given me. That's why I'm
Telling you
looking.
as the commander of Internal Affairs, I was never briefed on the Ronald Greene
Right.
case.
No. I hear you. So you said you gave us some information. I'm saying I don't have it in front of
Okay.
me.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
maybe I'll come back to you once they give me that, because I thought it was torture and murder also. And what do you believe in your capacity now? What do you believe should happen to any of the officers? Because I think I heard him say it. But what do you think should happen to any of the officers that was there and knew about it? And if there was any such cover up, what do you think?
A reference back to my opening statement, they should be held accountable.
Okay. Thank you very much. And once I get your documents, I'll review them and then I'll come back, because I had these questions in my mind based upon the testimony that we've already heard, right?
Thank you, and I'm glad that's why I'm here.
Yes, sir. And I'll come back as soon as I look at your documents.
Thank you.
Representative Bagala.
Thank you. And I think the best way to open up is Captain Richard. What was your role in all this, if you don't mind? I know you didn't have an opening statement, but if you'll just tell me where you were in the organization.
Yes, sir, Representative. Mark Richards, retired captain, Louisiana State Police. At the time of the incident, I was the commander of the training academy, director of training for state police.
Okay.
And Scott Davis was one of my subordinates.
Okay, and I think Scott Davis testified earlier that he showed it to you, and if I recall, he said, criminal investigation's ongoing, don't worry about it. Is that?
Yes, sir, that's correct. I don't recall exactly when Scott contacted me. It was either the end of May or early June 2019. So in an appropriate time after the incident, we received a use of force report. He notified me that he had some concerns about the contents of the report and the videos that he was able to access at the time. So we met briefly in his office. I looked over the narrative of the report and a small snippet of the video, and I agreed wholeheartedly with Scott. I trusted his opinion that it was criminal in nature. I then made a short phone call to my Major David McClendon, and I advised him that Scott and I had some serious issues with a particular use of force, and told him it involved Troop F and Mr. Greene, and he indicated to me that the Criminal Investigations Division was handling the case. And at the time, I had no reason to believe that it wasn't being handled appropriately.
Okay. So you feel like you saw what you thought was potentially criminal behavior, reported it up the chain of command, and you learned from the chain of command that there was an ongoing criminal investigation. So it would seem, at least, that okay, everything's as it should be. That's kind of how you felt?
Yes, sir. I actually expected for Scott to be contacted by the CID to do a more detailed use of force analysis,
right,
as he had been asked to do many times before, either by CID or by Internal Affairs. But that, I'm not sure if that ever happened or not.
Well, I think he indicated it didn't. If I remember apparently, as I recall his conversations or his testimony, it was that there was never anything other than his discussion with you, he never heard from anyone else about it. So, do you know? Did you converse with Major McClendon afterwards to see if did he ever give you any further briefings about the?
No, sir.
Do you know if he passed on to the investigators the concerns of you and of Scott?
I'm not aware.
All right. Let's go back now. Lieutenant Colonel Chavez, at the time you were over the Internal Affairs Division.
Yes, sir.
And what would it take to initiate an internal affairs investigation within state police?
It would take a complaint referral or information that we've received that a violation, administrative violation occurred.
So typically that would be another person within state police saying, I need you to conduct an investigation, or that would be a private person. Could you tell me a little bit about your policies regarding what would initiate an internal affairs, more specifically?
Yes, sir. No, you're right on it. It would take a complaint. Persons could file a complaint through our complaint affidavit form, personal complaint affidavit form. It could be information that was learned by a commander or higher in our department. It can be information that we received in internal affairs that would lead to or suggest any type of allegations of policies or procedures being violated.
And would it that didn't happen? Nobody contacted you guys to conduct an internal investigation, or no one within your chain of command instructed you to initiate an internal affairs investigation?
No, sir. I believe it was discussed amongst the senior command when they got word or learned that this incident occurred, that they were going to pursue it through the criminal investigation division. Internal affairs was not included or brought in on briefs or made aware of any updates while I was the commander of this case.
Would it be normal that there would not be an IA and a criminal investigation at the same time? What would your policies indicate? That you complete the criminal before you initiate, or would you do them concurrently?
Our practice back then was if we launched a criminal case, we would not do an IA case at the same time. That since has changed. Right now, we would pull an IA case and suspend it pending the criminal investigation.
I'm assuming, since you said that IA got the case in August of 2020, that would suggest that the criminal investigation was completed. If using your non-concurrent investigations, that would mean, okay, we're not pursuing the criminal investigation anymore. IA, it's yours now.
That's what I would assume. Yes, sir.
Okay, so you said when they got the case in August of 2020, you were still there or not still there?
No, sir. I was transferred as the commander or captain over public affairs.
Okay, did you maintain contact with your old division to find out if they were actually conducting an internal investigation or not? I mean, you said it was sent to y'all or they received it or whatever, but does that mean that it was an active investigation, or can you answer that question?
I don't understand your question.
If they received the case in August of 2020, what did they do?
So you would have, I assume at that point, once IA receives the case, they assign it to a case investigator and then begin doing the administrative investigation on that particular case.
So if that's a correct assumption, and I will qualify that is your assumption, that's not your knowledge, that would mean that the now 20 months later, that investigation still has not concluded. No action taken.
No, sir. As I'm aware of it, I believe that first case was the case involving Master Trooper Chris Hollingsworth and the use of force allegations.
Yeah.
As I am aware, that case has been completed.
Yes, the others.
I don't have the information on the other cases.
Okay. I might come back a little bit. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Representative Bacala. Just a couple of questions. For Lieutenant Colonel VanBuren, I know you said you agree with the Scott Brown's description of the torture and murder, so I understand that. What I do have a bit of a question about, I know you mentioned the Clary video and the question of whether it was uploaded or wasn't uploaded. When Albert Paxton testified, I don't necessarily, as I recall, it wasn't necessarily a case of whether the video was uploaded or not uploaded. It was that he didn't have permission to have access to some of those videos. So is it unusual for somebody who's investigating a case to not have access to the system that allows them to see the videos?
That's not necessarily accurate, sir.
Okay.
And so there were two people in that office that had access to evidence.com, and that was Steve Taylor and Caleb Reeves at the time. Again, having access, I can tell you this, that Albert Paxton did access evidence.com. It was in July of 2019, which was the month prior to him actually submitting the case file to the district attorney's office. So that was not necessarily an accurate statement, and we can show that by way of audit trail.
Yeah, but okay, and I'm not necessarily disputing with you on that. But so it's Caleb Reeves, same Caleb Reeves that is the son of former Colonel Reeves.
Correct.
Same Reeves that was in the meeting when they were talking about potentially violating the law or sidestepping some rules.
That, sir, I can't speak to because I don't remember that statement being made.
All right. Well, no, that was made. I think that probably was. It wasn't. I'm getting my Scots mixed up. Not who's the older Scott?
Scott Brown.
Scott Brown. Scott Brown made the statement of the people that were in the room when there was talk of basically suppressing evidence or not turning evidence over and all that stuff. And he said that Caleb Reeves was in that room as well. I don't know if you recall that, but that was said in a prior meeting. So all I'm saying is, I'm not saying that maybe through other people in the office that he may not have had access, but it didn't seem, at least one of those people, I could see being in a position of not being very cooperative.
Look, I can't dispute that. I wasn't there, but to say that they did not have access is all I'm saying is it's not necessarily an accurate statement. And again, we can show and see those people who actually went in and out of evidence.com because of the audit trail.
All right. To any of you, do you know or have you ever heard of some of the officers and maybe even Colonel Reeves using an alternative to regular text messaging like WhatsApp or Telegram or any of these other encrypted type messaging services?
No, I'm not aware of that.
I recall a conversation at our emergency operations center early on in Colonel Reeves's administration that him and Colonel Noel were discussing using an app to text message, but I don't recall what it was, and I don't recall if they downloaded the apps or used them. I just recall them saying that.
Okay. And so just to be clear, messaging apps like WhatsApp and Telegram will allow you to send encrypted messages that'll be outside of what your phone provider could see or download or what have you.
That was what I derived from that conversation, that it was some type of app that was outside of regular messaging.
All right. And do you know what the purpose of them, of anyone wanting to use an app like that?
No. Nothing was stated at that time.
But it wouldn't surprise you if somebody used an app like that to try to subvert or get around public records requests or any other type of...
It wouldn't surprise me one bit.
All right. That's all I have for right now. Representative Villio.
Thank you. Gentlemen, that there was a beating of Mr. Greene and that there was a cover-up doesn't take a great leap by anyone, including by me, who is a staunch supporter of law enforcement. But I don't believe it's my role to establish that evidence, and I trust that the U.S. Attorney's Office and the DA will do their job in that regard. What I'm interested in knowing is who at the top knew what and when. Lieutenant Colonel Chavez, at any time did you have any conversations with anyone with the governor's staff or the governor regarding the Ronald Greene incident? If so, when?
No, ma'am, I have not had any conversations with anyone with the governor's staff.
Who did you tell about the incident?
When?
Well, that's my question. At any time.
The only time that I had official knowledge to respond was while I was in public affairs, getting requests from media.
And I'm going to talk to you about the word you just used, official. And I'm going to talk to you about the words you have in your memo. And I'm going to see if I can get to the bottom of this. And I'll tell you why. You state that I was never briefed, nor did I receive any information directly related to the Ronald Greene case from LSP Senior Command. And you just used the word official. I'm not asking you officially, and I'm not asking you from LSP Senior Command. We all know there is talk amongst the officers or troopers, colonel, lieutenant colonels, etc., captains, sergeants within LSP. So my question to you then is unofficially, not in your role as commander of IA, did you have information early on about the beating of Ronald Greene?
The only information that I would have received, ma'am, is what has been seen through media, through troopers and family members and people calling and talking about it.
Lieutenant Colonel, you know Mr. Calvin Braxton, do you not?
Yes, ma'am.
And he was the former LSP commissioner, correct?
Yes.
And you know that you're sworn to tell the truth today, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you not have conversations with Calvin Braxton in late 2019 or early 2020 regarding the beating death of Ronald Greene with the intent, specific intent for Mr. Braxton to relay that information to the governor's administration and or the governor?
Not to my knowledge, ma'am.
Well, that's something you would remember, correct?
Absolutely. I know Mr. Braxton.
Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's your testimony that you never told Mr. Braxton that information.
I never told Mr. Braxton in reference to what you're speaking about, ma'am, anything about talking to the governor's office about Ronald Greene case.
Okay, and I want to be very careful. So let's take away the intent of telling the governor and or the governor's staff. Did you have a conversation with Calvin Braxton in late 2019, early 2020 regarding the Ronald Greene incident and any information you have regarding the Ronald Greene incident?
Ma'am, not that I can recall.
Gentlemen, I wish I could say that your statements move me. Everybody knows by looking at me, they don't, because you had a lot of opportunities before now to make those statements. I yield.
Thank you, Representative Villio. Representative Landry.
But from the three of you, I think one of you may have answered this, but it wasn't clear to me all. Was when did you first see the video, the one that came out in the media that I think was shown to the family and the governor in fall of 2020, I believe?
I'll take that, ma'am. I'm not sure if I actually saw the video that was shown to the family. Mm-hmm. I have seen the videos, but I'm not certain of the ones that were actually shown to the families. So I don't know. I can't make that connection.
Then I guess my next question is, when was the earliest that you viewed any of these videos?
Outside of that was pushed out via media. The first opportunity outside of that I had to actually watch or view the video was when Lieutenant Scott Brown and Sergeant Paxton came down and briefed Colonel Cammon and I, and that would have been April of 2021.
Early last year. Okay.
Representative Landry, I stated earlier that I viewed a snippet of a video. I'm not sure what trooper's body cam it was, or if any of that portion or full-length video that I viewed was shown to the family. But my first viewing of any video was at either the end of May of 2019 or early June of 2019 in my meeting with Scott Davis.
early. Okay.
Yeah, my first time seeing any video was when the leaks came out. Is when I saw the video. I was.
You hadn't seen it internally,
No, ma'am.
just from publicity. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Representative. Representative Bacala.
Thank you, guys. I know we have you two guys are lieutenant colonels now. Were you lieutenant colonels at the time of the incident?
No, sir.
Rank then?
Say it again.
What were y'all's ranks then?
Captain over internal affairs.
Okay.
And I was captain in our gaming enforcement division.
Okay. Were there, and we used to call them staff meetings, were there regular commanders meetings, staff meetings, or whatever else you'd like to call it with the hierarchy of state police? I mean, did they have a weekly meeting? You know,
As I was aware, yes, they met regularly.
well, as a lieutenant colonel now, do you go to those now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and they're pretty much unchanged since before you were a lieutenant colonel.
Yeah, I can't speak to exactly how the process went, how they met.
But at least as far as you're aware, and I guess as a captain in a division, you would have probably been responsible for passing information to whoever your lieutenant colonel was at the time, so that they could share that information at these staff meetings. Is that kind of correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, all three of y'all agree that if there was anything significant happening within your realm of command, you would have passed it up to your chain of command so that it could have had the opportunity to be discussed at a staff meeting.
Yes, sir.
All right. So we should assume, I think a question that you can't answer, maybe you can. And if you're aware of it, I'd appreciate it if you would share whatever you might have heard. I mean, this is not a criminal trial. We can use hearsay here, okay? Since there were, I guess you would testify, regular meetings. First of all, how regular were they?
Our meetings now are weekly, depending on scheduling. If there's a conflict,
You think they had weekly meetings then?
I believe they did.
Okay.
If I might add, we had quarterly command staff meetings. We tried to meet captains and above everybody at least quarterly.
And that would have been with the colonel, lieutenant colonels, etc.
Correct.
So that would have been. So you guys were involved quarterly in staff meetings or commanders meetings or whatever you might want to call it, correct?
Yes, sir.
But above that, we think there were likely to be weekly meetings among the lieutenant colonels. I wish someone was here to answer the question, because the question is, did the Ronald Greene investigation, internal investigation, the criminal investigation, the circumstances, were they ever discussed at a command staff meeting? And how often were they discussed? Or was it just never discussed, which means somebody just ignored it? I guess you guys can't answer, but I think it's an important question that we should ask.
As far as the commanders meeting, I don't recall us having a discussion about
I don't recall
the Ronald
either.
Greene case in the quarterly meetings that we would have.
Well, and listen, it's quarterly, so maybe there was no need to talk about it if it had been talked about, in the 2 months prior to the third month quarterly meeting. But would you guys agree that something of that magnitude would be probably the number one topic, or should have been the number one topic in any commander's meeting?
I would say absolutely, sir. And I'm going to tell you, I don't sit here making excuses for those fail points. And as I said earlier, this is one of the craziest things I've ever seen in 35 years of wearing a badge. This makes absolutely no sense.
And listen, a lot of troopers have reached out to every one of us on this committee, and I have not heard any state trooper yet say they're disappointed that what we're doing. They say that what we're doing needs to be done, that we need to help. They're not happy either. All right, so I think the average trooper is very much feels the way the average citizen of this state does. So, but okay, so let's go back. So we there were staff meetings. You weren't privy to the weeklies, if that's in fact what they were. You were participants in the quarterlies, and it never came up quarterly.
That's correct.
All right. Let me ask you this, and this is what should have happened on May 11th in May 12th and May 13th of 2019?
I'll answer that question. What should have happened is that those who have been accused of thrusting themselves in the midst of a criminal investigation, and in particular those who are outside the Bureau of Investigations, they should have allowed those investigators, those troopers, to do their jobs. I do believe that there was a lot of overreaching, in my opinion.
Wait, hold on. You said you should have allowed the troopers doing the investigation to do their jobs. That implies that someone prevented them from doing their investigative job.
That is what has been articulated, and unless
that's something you're aware of, or just something
I
that
was
you've
not
heard?
personally involved in it. I'm just going off of what has been said to y'all.
All right. Okay. I'm good. I wanted to stop right there, but keep going if you don't mind.
Yeah, and so based on that, if that be true, they should have been allowed to do their jobs without interference from people who were at our level back then.
Well, I've heard the word interference before, and that was Colonel Reeves said he did not want to interfere in the investigation, so he did not. But I kind of take the opposite approach. As we sit back. You can't abdicate responsibility, and it's the responsibility of the colonels and the lieutenant colonels and the captains to make sure that these things are investigated properly. And I think when you use the word "don't interfere," I'm not sure I buy that.
Sir, can I explain to you how we do it? And I think it would be appropriate in any investigation. Currently, the way that we do it, if we have such an investigation, a significant investigation like that, especially those that involving police officers, on the front end, we'll have that discussion. We'll talk about the potential charges, if you will. But it's up to those investigators, the finders of fact, to go out there and either prove or disprove. Once they've completed their investigations, we'll have a second meeting and we'll talk about those things. If there are criminal fractures, the things that they have uncovered factually, do those things fracture the statute? And if they fracture the statute, then if it fractures the statute, then they go with their charges. And I think that's an appropriate way to do it without us, as the old saying goes, getting in the weeds of their investigation. That can be distracting, incredibly distracting, and can also be confusing, because sometimes there are those who, they receive it as mixed messaging.
Okay, my 3 minutes is up, but I will.
Can I answer that as well?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll take it a step before what Colonel VanBuren is saying. What should have happened, Representative, on that scene was everything that was documented should have been documented accordingly and properly. I would expect, as a deputy superintendent over patrol, that our supervisors over patrol would have gone back to watch that video, that because a pursuit was involved, because there was significant a death as well. They should have been going back, holding those guys and officers on the scene accountable. So that's what I would have been expecting, that we would have caught this early on, that there was issues on the scene. And even the report that we see, and we brought up the crash report, there was some concerns about that I see that I think should have been addressed way back when.
Well, listen, I'll just tell you, I never worked for state police, but I did 37 years in law enforcement, and I've worked a few hundred death cases, and I never said, come back and tell me later on what you came up with. It's like every day I'm going to know what's going on, and most time I'll be out there beating the streets with you. And the idea that I'm going to give it to a sergeant and say, come back when you're ready, that's just a foreign concept to me, honestly. But I get my 3 minutes is up. So
if I could answer, I think they should have been put on administrative leave immediately.
And Representative Michael, if I may, you have the way that we're structured. You have sergeants at the ground level, you have lieutenants in that field office, you have commanders, and you have majors. In my opinion, I think us as lieutenant colonels getting that far in the weeds, it really sort of confuses some things. So there is accountability. We do have optics. It's just that we're not in the weeds.
We'll just have to listen. I appreciate you guys, and I know you're passionate about this, but I'm just going to have to disagree. To me, it's like if buck stops here, and if the buck stops with me, I guarantee you I'm going to make sure that everything is being done every minute of the day to ensure that the investigation is pursued properly, and no stone left unturned, and it's going to be done timely, and there's no room for doing it at a comfortable pace when it needs to be done quickly, but accurately. So that's it. Thank you.
That's all right. Representative Nelson.
Lieutenant Colonel Cammon, you said in your statement that you emailed to us that you attended the meeting on May 20th, 2021 with Colonel Davis and Lieutenant Colonel Kane with DA Belton.
Yes, sir.
So you said in your response to that, it says, during this meeting with DA Belton and LSP staff, we had a very deliberate discussion in reference to Lieutenant Clary's video and the actions observed by the officers on the scene and whether or not additional charges were warranted. What do you mean by that when you said you had a very deliberate discussion?
Yeah, and I've heard and watched some of the testimony prior to me getting here today, and I know that there's been some discussion and questioning brought up as to what was happening in that meeting. As you see, I noted that I was called and invited with Colonel Davis and the people that were listed to go and review and watch the video that had now been delivered to the DA and that had now been part of the supplemental report by Sergeant Paxton. What I mean by that is we were at a table in the DA's office discussing the video that was being shown, and there was conversations on what everybody saw and what was your interpretation of what was being shown here. And the deliberate conversation was, what is your opinion? What do you see here? Do you think that there should be additional charges? That's what I mean by that statement.
And could you tell me what was the opinion of the people sitting at that table about whether or not there should be charges?
Yeah, we walked away that we didn't see in our opinion that there were charges based on the evidence that we were looking at, in particular to the video that it was showing us.
So everyone including the DA Belton and everybody else from Louisiana State Police, or just the state
everyone
police?
Did not agree. I mean, there was some discussion from the DA as to should these be charges, should charges be brought here. I can tell you when we walked out of that door, our opinion was that we didn't find enough information or evidence to bring up any other charges. And if there were charges, what was said was, Mr. DA, if you believe that there are something that rises to that level to bring charges, by all means, you have the authority as well to pursue that.
But so in that meeting, the opinion of everyone from state police was there was nothing in the Clary video that rose to the level of necessitating any charge, because there was no charge done. There still haven't been any charges filed, right?
No, sir.
Okay. And then what about you? What is your opinion now? Do you still think that there should be no charges filed against anybody?
Sir, the question at hand was that we identified pepper spray being administered. The video that I saw and the video that we were shown, I cannot clearly go stand before a judge or anyone and say that I can see pepper spray being used. So it was my opinion that I do not agree at that point, based on the evidence that I saw, that additional charges should be brought upon the fact that pepper spray was used at that moment. That was my opinion.
And so the comment in the question was only whether or not pepper spray had been used, not the kind of the totality of the video and whether or not there was anything else involved.
We specifically looked at the moment where Mr. Ronald Greene yelled or made an audible sound, and the discussion was brought up as to that particular portion of the video, and should we go back and then add additional charges.
And so would you describe that conversation, would you describe it as heated, or was it calm and professional? What would you say?
No, I mean,
I've heard it described multiple ways.
I mean, we weren't in there fist fighting, right? There wasn't a discussion like we were in a fist fighting. There was obvious disagreement and concern and discussion about it, but at the end of the day, everybody's opinion was left at the table.
All right. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Representative Nelson. So let me just follow up that for one quick second. So they didn't show you when they hit when he was hitting the head with the flashlight.
Yeah, that wasn't the video. That video wasn't shown when we went there. That particular day, the video that we saw was the video that had just been now made aware to the report, where Sergeant Paxton added it and a supplement to his case report. Yes, sir.
No, that's fine. All right, Representative Marcel.
Thank you. Lieutenant Colonel VanBuren, you made reference to Mr. Clary, and you said that he was the one who said, "Don't do that."
Yes, ma'am.
Could you help me understand?
Yes, there was
what
a conversational exchange that occurred on the night of the beating. And
I can't hear you.
There was a conversation that occurred and happened on the night of the beating, and it was Hollingsworth Trooper Hollingsworth, and he made the statement that let me go
about
back
spitting the blood up or something, right?
I've got it because I want to quote it.
Well, I mean, you don't have to quote it. I mean, that's where he was spitting up blood, right?
He said that I was going to set him up, but I didn't want him spitting blood all over us. That's what he said.
And so you said Clary said,
"Well, don't do that."
Well, don't do that. And you take that to mean what? Don't do it.
Well, I
don't set him up.
Exactly.
Or just don't say it.
No, don't do that. Don't set him up. Is the way I appreciated that.
Okay, so you talked about the trail of the body camera footage where you all can see and access and see who accessed it, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me, were you aware that Clary accessed this video while he was saying that he did not have the video? That there was no video?
It certainly, in the audit trail, it certainly shows.
Audit trail? That's what I'm talking about.
Yes, it shows where he uploaded it. And there were several other people who actually.
I know you talked about it was there.
Right.
We got that. But I think at some point, well, some of the testimony that we've heard is that Clary said that the video didn't exist. You unaware of that? That there was no video?
I can't. We can't prove or disprove that.
You can't prove or disprove whether he said that?
We can't, because if you remember, when Sergeant Paxson was here, he said that was a conversation that happened or occurred between he and Clary. So there weren't any witnesses. So
since there weren't any witnesses, we're gonna just.
Well, it's his word against his word, right?
Okay, I hear you. So let me ask you another question. On the night of the incident, were there any thread depth and tire impressions done on this, since it was a fatality? What was that?
That would be a patrol question, because I'm not sure.
You're not sure? Because if in fact it was, then there should have been one if it was a fatality. Is that accurate?
I agree.
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't see one. I've been looking for it.
You're right. There is. I don't see it on this report.
There isn't one, is there? Pardon me? A tire pressure. Like an analysis of the tire pressure when there is a fatality. So there is none, right?
No, ma'am. Not on this report.
Okay, so you, I mean, I guess you can clearly see a lot of omissions, why the public believe that some things that's kind of like 101 in law enforcement if there's a fatality. So a lot of things that were not done, a lot of coroner's reports that are not there, a lot of Clary's, whether the video was there, wasn't there when he assessed it. All of those things bring about questions in not only our minds, but certainly the public's mind. And so it's just, I'm where Villio is with this. It's just disturbing to me that we have some people coming here saying that videos that you knew of, and you're saying you never saw it. The fact that in Belton's office, you didn't see any reason to charge Clary. None of the state police, as I understand it. All of those things kind of baffled for us. So when they start talking about a cover-up, it kind of starts when you got all these different pieces. That's how we get to form those kinds of opinions. But I do want to ask you something. Do you know Attorney Jennifer Murray?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you ever have a conversation with her? And did you ever give her any information regarding this video?
No, ma'am. I've had conversation with Jennifer Murray, but I don't recall having a conversation with her about Ronald Greene's case.
You don't recall any conversation about Ronald Greene?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Did you ever ask anyone to delete any text messages?
No, ma'am.
On the Ronald Greene matter, or any matter for that matter?
Absolutely not.
You've never told anyone to delete any text messages from their phone?
No, ma'am. About Ronald Greene's case?
About anything, sir, as an officer. You know, because...
I mean, look at what you're asking me. Have I ever asked anybody to delete text messages?
As in reference to your job, sir, in reference to evidence, in reference to officers. Let me be specific. Any officer. You ever told any officer you need to delete that?
if it's something that's not concerned, you have to give me more context to what you're asking me, because I probably told somebody to delete something if it wasn't appropriate, or it wasn't something they should have had, or I mean, I don't know what you're speaking of. So
I'm just trying to figure out. Since you say you didn't have anybody to delete anything, y'all did have phones that were, scrubbed, and we don't have that, right? So I'm just trying to figure out what is the practice of state police. And so we get a lot of different information, and you said you were here to tell the truth, and I'm trying to give you that opportunity to tell me, and if you didn't, then you didn't.
Right. I'm here to give you whatever answers I can give you. And I would love to answer your question if you can be more specific, but to ask me if I ever asked somebody to delete something off their phone, if you want me to say that on the record, I probably did, yes ma'am, but it wasn't anything in reference to Ronald Greene, if that's where you're trying to go.
I'm not, don't get hostile, I'm just asking some questions.
Trying to help answer the question.
Scott Davis saw this video within, 2 weeks of the incident? What'd you say?
Yes, ma'am. I believe it was in late May or early June, but it was an appropriate time period for receiving a use of force report.
And Scott Davis was an expert on use of force, was he not?
Yes, ma'am.
And so who would he have given that information to immediately? He wouldn't have just not done anything with it, right?
So as I stated earlier in response to Representative Bacala, he asked to speak to me about the use of force report and the video. Mm-hmm. I read the narrative of the report, viewed a snippet of an unknown trooper's video. I don't know which one we were looking at.
And so at that time, I heard you say that. So let me stop you. So once you saw the snippet, nothing, I'm like Bacala, and I'm not in law enforcement. Nothing said, let me see the full video so I can get, making a whole assessment, assessment whether somebody needs to be charged or whether this needs to go to internal affairs, which is where Mr. Chavez was. Because Mr. Chavez said he never saw it and nobody never talked about it in the building. It just was, nobody never said anything. So he didn't know anything until they showed it to him in the DA's office, right?
No, ma'am. I said that the first time I saw the video, I saw it through the leaks, like most media.
The media. You saw it in the media.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay.
Yes, ma'am. If I could
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Reiterate what I answered earlier. I didn't need to see much more. I was satisfied of what I saw was criminal in nature. I also trusted Scott's expert opinion in use of force, as I always have in my time working with him. And I notified my supervisor that we had issues with.
Who was your supervisor?
Major David McClendon.
Okay.
And I was notified that he was aware of the case and that the criminal investigation.
And who was over David McClendon?
Lieutenant Colonel Lane Barnum.
And who was over Lane Barnum?
Mike Noel.
Mike Noel.
Who was assistant superintendent.
And so those meetings that they continue to talk about, were you ever in any of those meetings?
No, ma'am.
You weren't in those?
No, ma'am.
That was high level stuff?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Representative Marcel. Representative Villio.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Captain Richards.
Yes, ma'am.
You're retired, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You weren't promoted, were you?
No, ma'am.
Lieutenant Colonel VanBuren. I may have been born at night, but I wasn't born last night. So I want to talk about your testimony regarding Albert Paxton. You stated that, I believe, that he logged onto the system in July 2019, correct?
That is correct.
But he didn't have access to the videos, to watch the videos then, did he?
Well, according to the audit trail, that's what it appears. He's in the audit trail. So if he accessed that system, he watched something.
Lieutenant Colonel VanBuren, I'm going to stop you, and I'm going to let you have an opportunity to think about that answer. There are emails from Albert Paxton requesting repeatedly to be able to have access to watch the videos. He couldn't search for videos, and he couldn't watch videos without being granted access to the videos. Tell me I'm right or tell me I'm wrong.
You're wrong.
I'm wrong.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when did he watch the videos, Lieutenant Clary's video? When did he watch Lieutenant Clary's video?
Well, that wouldn't have been until after that particular video was identified, but that does not mean that he didn't have access. Ma'am, what I'm telling you is that he had access, he was given access, and if he didn't have access, he could have certainly requested access, and we can show that he was in the system.
And you're telling me he could log on and he could search for Lieutenant Clary's video?
He could have.
He could have.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And if I tell you there's emails to the contrary where he's requesting the ability to access the videos, you're going to tell me they don't exist?
Ma'am, the only thing that I can tell you is I'm looking at an audit trail with his name on it.
And we do have people, I think, that could speak to that, because I'm not about to try and dissect what this report says, but to Colonel VanBuren's point, we have paperwork that shows that he, Sergeant Paxton, had on July 22nd at 1:30 p.m. granted access via myevidence.com. It's right here on the document, ma'am.
And what does that granted access mean to you? Do you know? Do you know specifically what that means? And if that granted him access to search and view the videos?
You would have to ask our technical support people for that. I don't.
Okay. Yes, sir. Because I don't want answer. I don't want guessing. I want to know whether you know the answer to that, and you don't. Retired Captain Richard, do you?
No, ma'am. I don't.
Okay. Thank you. And just one last question for anyone who can answer it. My understanding is the governor was very proud of the fact that there was full deployment of camera videos for all the officers. So I may be thinking naively, but if I'm in charge and I'm the lieutenant colonel, and I know you don't want to get into the weeds, sir, but I do. If I know how many officers are on the scene of an incident in which the superintendent has advised the governor that there was a violent struggle and an in-custody death, I would be counting and getting the names of every one of those officers and saying, where are the videos from each of those officers? Did anyone do that?
I would have done the same thing, man.
Yeah, and I'll actually agree with you on that because here's the deal. This was an in-custody death, all right? So we've gotten a little, I say we, some have gotten a little bit confused about fatality, in-custody death, whether or not it was an investigation was launched because of a use of force. I can tell you this, fatality crashes, CID is not dispatched. So that incident started out as a use of force, in-custody death investigation. And at some point, somebody made a decision to coin it a fatality. That's the truth.
The fatality crash?
Yes, ma'am. At some point.
Yet, funny, there was no crash scene report, was there?
There was not.
That's pretty unusual, isn't it?
Outside of this basic crash report that we have here, you're absolutely correct. Here's the deal. We talk cover-up, potential cover-ups. We're agreeing with y'all. We're totally agreeing with y'all. There's so much out there that we don't know about, and I'm just being honest with you. There are questions that we will never be able to provide you answers to because of exactly what most people feel. There was a cover-up, and there was I'm going to put it this way, a push to distort that which was. We can't re-script a narrative and make you unsee what you've seen or convince you to believe that you don't see what you've seen.
But here's the deal, sir. When I'm looking for who knew what or when at the top, and I consider y'all to be at the top.
Now.
Well, you were captain of IA. I would certainly use the phrase, and you've heard it several times, but as a lawyer, what should you have known and when? And it gets back to that very question of counting the officers and knowing the officers who were on the scene and making sure you had every video. And when you sat down with the DA, making sure that every video was there. So if you wanted to know, because you should have known, you would have known.
Ma'am, and to your point, and look, I agree with you again. That was not done. And that's why on the front end, I mentioned that was a CID fail point. We should have confirmed that. We should have verified that information, and we didn't. Now, here's the deal. Again, I was a captain in the gaming enforcement division at the time, but you know what? I sit where I sit now, and I have to take ownership of that. And so I totally agree with what you're saying, wholeheartedly. You're absolutely correct.
I yield.
Thank you, Representative. So look, I guess here lies the question then. I think we're at the point since we all agree that there was a cover-up, we agree that somebody took this from an in-custody death to a fatality, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. What has been done since we've all reached that conclusion to find out who did that? So who changed it? Who's responsible for the cover-up? And who's responsible from changing it to an in-custody death to a fatality? Because if we can find out who it is, we know who was behind the cover-up.
Sir, you have the same questions we have. I think the people with the answers are not here.
Yeah, but you're the investigative unit. You're the state police. I'm trying to find out what effort have you guys made since drawing that conclusion to find out who's responsible.
See, and here's where we are with all of this too. And
I mean, let me just stop for a second. It's not enough to say, okay, here's the conclusion, and we agree and move on without finding out what's been done to correct it. You guys are state police. You guys are the epitome of law enforcement, or supposed to be, in Louisiana. It's not while we're here to investigate that, we don't have the resources, nor is it really our ultimate responsibility to come up with that. This is something that we're asking you. Let me ask it this way. How long have you guys reached this conclusion? That where you agree with Representative Video that it is a cover-up, that somebody changes from an in-custody death to fatality? How long has it been since that conclusion was reached by anybody?
Well, I think for me early on, to be quite
all right,
honest.
How about?
I've been gone for 14 months, but this all broke in the media September 2020. I was retired on terminal leave 2 months later, but I think around the time of the media reports, it was very clear that a narrative was being pushed and that it was more to it than a fatality.
Right. So at least 14 months. So I want to know from someone in the last 14 months, what has been done to find out who was responsible for the cover-up? If you're telling me in 14 months you hadn't had any answers,
no,
then that'd be disappointing.
Well, no, there's a lot of, and here's where we are. When you think about the moving pieces, and I'll say it that way, on the prosecutorial side of it, right? So we learned that this case had been shipped off to the U.S. Attorney's Office. We learned that D.A. Belton had it. I wasn't sure, personally, if there was necessarily anything else we needed to do, because I felt and believed at the time, I suspect that they still had all that information. So if we were going to look at consider a grand jury, my belief was all that would come out. But I can tell you this, and look, I left uniform patrol nearly 30 years ago. But even when I look at this crash report, it's disturbing. Quite honestly, this is written and drafted like a basic crash report. A fatality crash with reconstruction and all that is a lot bigger than this. And again, I believe it was an afterthought, and the fatality was just checked on this thing.
No, and I get that. And so I will say this. I think that it's like this committee was put together, and today we've reached an agreement. We all agree it's a cover-up. We all agree that something happened. And then tomorrow you read in the newspaper or see in the media that we've decided to conclude our business because now we've answered the question of whether or not there was a cover-up. I would be just as disappointed if I were a member of the public and saying, well, why didn't they go a step further in finding out who was behind the cover-up? And I'm saying I'm expressing that same disappointment to say that to draw the conclusion is not enough for me. And so, and I don't think that's what we were tasked with, and I certainly know that's not what you guys were tasked with. But that being said, Representative Bacala.
That was a run-on sentence with my name at the end. I wouldn't. Guys, let me ask you, going back to the meeting with D.A. Belton, all right? And you said that the only thing that was shown in the meeting with D.A. Belton was that small clip trying to determine whether or not pepper spray was deployed.
Yes, sir. That's,
it seems inconceivable if you're sitting down with D.A. Belton, not you. You're not running the meeting, right? But why in the heck would you pick out one small clip and concentrate on whether pepper spray was deployed when all you guys who have seen the video, all the videos, or the majority, characterize it, agreed with the characterization that it was torture and murder? Do you think it's odd that only one small clip was shown to D.A. Belton as you expected him to make a decision whether or not criminal prosecution was called for?
I'll answer that. I was in that meeting. That video portion that we saw was what D.A. Belton showed us and brought for the discussion.
Okay, so do you think he had all the videos? I'm assuming he did, but why would? And apparently, the characterization earlier in testimony that no one wanted to pursue the criminal investigation, and there was a disagreement over whether to go forward. Was the disagreement strictly over whether the pepper spray was a problem?
So let me clear something up, because I don't know if on that meeting, May, whatever date we had on that meeting in May, from my understanding, D.A. Belton had already had all the other video. We were now discussing the new video that was being learned of by Lieutenant Clary.
All right. Okay. And listen, I know that our acting chair has characterized this as a cover-up. I think everybody's agreed that none of us think it was properly done after. And I go back, cover up indifference, intentionally, keeping myself in the dark for plausible deniability. I don't know what the answer is yet. I just know that it just doesn't sound like it was very professionally done at the aftermath at this point in time. Thank you, Mr. Acting Chair.
Thank you, Representative. And let me just be clear. I think they agreed to the statement of a cover-up. But let me ask, for Captain Richards, did anyone ever ask you to delete the Ronald Greene crash report or video from the shared drive?
Yes, sir.
Who would that be?
Ultimately, the order came down from Bob Brown, who was assistant superintendent at that time.
Why would, in your opinion, why would he ask you to do such a thing?
Well, I think if you look back at the time was when the media reports were coming out. So I'm only assuming, I'm making an assumption on my part that public affairs had some conversations with media personnel. And
who would have been public affairs at that time?
Captain Cammon at the time.
Okay.
Lieutenant Nick Manali, specifically. And at that point, I think a decision was made to request us to block it, which was really irregular. I had never experienced it in my 8 months of being there. And I also talked to other individuals that had worked in the section a lot longer than I had, and they had never been asked to block a report before either. So if I'm remembering correctly, it was one of my subordinates, Lieutenant Jared Sandiford, contacted me, I believe September 14th of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically said, Captain, I need to put you in the loop on something. And he indicated to me that he had been contacted by Lieutenant Manali by phone.
Right.
And that Lieutenant Manali had requested that we block the crash report from being distributed, being accessed either internally or externally.
So if you would have blocked it or deleted, I guess let me ask you this. If you would have deleted it, would it have been a complete deletion, or would it have been just from?
There was never a discussion to delete it.
Okay.
If I said that, I misspoke. It was a discussion to block access to the crash report so it couldn't be sold online, which was kind of silly in the first place because fatalities can't be purchased online or accessed internally. So I took that as there was some fear of possible an internal source getting a copy of the crash report. So that was around the 14th. 2 or 3 days later.
14th of what month again?
September.
Okay.
2020. A few days later, I believe on the 17th, I issued a response because I wasn't included in the original email. Luckily, Lieutenant Sandifer requested that Lieutenant Manali make that request to him in writing. I think he was a little apprehensive about taking that on. Just because of the circumstances. I was left out of that email, and I took personal offense to it. I sat on it a little while, a few hours, and then I replied back to Lieutenant Manali that I was the commander of this section, and what he was asking to do was not our normal business and highly irregular.
Right.
And I copied my major on that. I copied Captain Cammon at the time and Lieutenant Sandifer. Within the next 3 days, I got a phone call from Major McClendon who said that Lieutenant Colonel Brown wanted us to block the crash report, that they had made a decision as a command staff to do that. And I told him I wanted it in writing, that I didn't feel comfortable doing it because it was so irregular.
Right. Did they ever put it in writing?
Yes, sir, they did. A few days later, I got an email from him. But I also issued a lengthy email to him stating my concerns, stating that I even cited the law, 32398, which covers traffic records, specifically says that while crash reports aren't public record and not subject to public records laws, that interested parties had a right to receive those reports. And interested parties being attorneys, of course, family members, and the media. And then I got a reply back from him in writing that Lieutenant Colonel Barnum had expressed to him that the department wanted the crash report blocked because the case was under federal investigation. And then he also issued some other directives on trying to find out how many or if any had been sold or accessed. And then if anybody requested the copy of the report, that we document that and forward that to legal affairs.
All right. Why do you think they wanted a list of who had already purchased it?
Can I speak to that?
Well, let me ask him first. I'm asking him.
It's my opinion they were concerned about people accessing the report for potential leaks. That's my opinion.
But if it would have been sold, I mean, I'm not sure that would have, I mean, would that technically qualified as a leak? You can, I mean, you just legitimately purchased it.
Right. So it was my understanding at the time that fatality reports could not be sold online. You actually had to go to a nearby troop.
Okay, so you had to actually go
Yes,
into
sir.
the troop office. You couldn't do
but
that.
there were people within the organization that had administrative rights in the traffic records system that could access those crash reports, and I think that might have been, in my opinion, again part of the concern.
All right, you can go ahead.
His answer that I was going to say, I think if I recall, at that time, that was concerns about it leaking and getting out. So I think the call was made because this was ongoing and it was a federal investigation for the sake of this crash report being leaked out. I think that's why that was asked or requested.
All right, no
So Representative Jordan, I think it's important to kind of go back to that timeline, is that these emails from Manali started around the 14th. The Chris Nakamoto story with WBRZ was on the 15th. The AP story by Jim Mustaine and Jake Blyberg was on the 18th. And in those stories, the pictures of the vehicle were exposed. Mm-hmm. And I think anybody that saw the pictures of the vehicle would question the authenticity and the validity of a crash report that said he died in that crash.
Right. So So let me ask you, in your opinion, is that all part of, if we're going to call it for whatever term we want to use, was that the beginning of the false narrative or the cover-up or whatever term you want to use in your opinion?
I don't know if it was the beginning. It may have been the middle.
But it was part of it.
It's definitely not the end.
Okay.
But it is a part of it.
All right.
Can I just add?
Absolutely.
You know, I was a captain over one section. I was one captain of 29.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a captain for a long time, for 9 years. The last 3 years, I had to ask permission to do everything. Any initiative I wanted to carry out, any action I wanted to take, I usually briefed a group of people. All the lieutenant colonels, typically Major Kane was there, the head of legal affairs, for everything I wanted to do other than buying paper and paper clips. I don't think this would be any different in terms of discussions about this case. That's my opinion.
Right.
But I think it's a strong inference to make that I'm one guy and I have to ask and brief on everything that I want to do. So why wouldn't all these same people know more about this case than what they're telling you?
And you're talking about Doug Kane and Faye Morrison?
I'm talking about all of them, all the way up to the top.
All right. Look, I will say this, and certainly nothing, no slight on the troopers that remain, because I got respect for troopers that remain. But I will tell you, it every meeting I leave so disappointed by the good men that have left the agency, have left the organization since this thing began, and I count you in that group. So I mean, my appreciation to all of you, but I mean the folks that, you know, I just wish that, and I'm not saying it wasn't your time to retire, so I'm not trying to insinuate what caused you to separate employment from state police, but thank you.
Can I say something to that?
Yes.
And I know Representative Marcel has asked some questions of individuals that have retired in the past. I think you can classify retirees with state police in the last 3 to 6 years, even one of three ways. People that get their time and they just go. People that retire in disgrace. And I think there's people that retire in disgust, and I'm one of those.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
I should still be there, but I couldn't take it anymore.
Sorry to hear that. Representative Villio.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Captain Richards, you testified that there was an email and further emails regarding blocking of the crash report, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And I believe you said that directive was that from Lieutenant Colonel Bob Brown?
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Was that from Lieutenant Colonel Bob Brown, did you say?
The verbal order was relayed to me by my major.
Okay, and that was Major who?
David McClendon.
Okay.
But the written directive came from Major McClendon on behalf of Lieutenant Colonel Barnum and, quote unquote, the department.
Okay. And I know you're gone, so you're not responsible, but we did ask for all email correspondence that you may have had either sent to you or sent by you regarding this matter, and that was not provided to us. So I see Superintendent Davis is here, and the request was to him, so perhaps someone can explain why that is missing.
I can give you some specific date ranges.
That would be great.
September 14th, 2020 to September 22nd, 2020.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
I yield.
Representative Marcel.
I really don't have a question. I just want to thank you for your honesty. You really don't have anything to lie about or forget. And I appreciate your service. And I'm sure that we're going to utilize the information that you have given us to help us to get to the bottom of all the people at the top that you talked about, that some people try to paint as some wonderful people, but they're a part of the cover-up. And I thank you. I just want to thank you. And I wish you well on your retirement.
Thank you.
Representative Bacala.
Thank you. Is there an internal affairs investigation into the investigation of the death of Ronald Greene? Has anybody said, you know, it's time to investigate ourselves to find out why we didn't get this thing right in the aftermath? Is there an internal affairs investigation of your agency from top to bottom to say where we dropped the ball?
Not that I know of, sir.
Should there be?
Well, here's where we begin to split hairs, so to speak. And I'm going to tell you, for a while now, quite honestly, it's almost like we have been, let me put it that, we've sort of been paralyzed in a way, because we all have heard of the federal probe and all that. We don't know what's going on with that. And quite honestly, I really don't even know if there is an active federal probe. So we sort of pumped the brakes on some things. But to specifically answer your question, not that I know of.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Representative Villio.
Oh, I'm sorry. Once again, for some reason it doesn't turn off for me.
Representative Hughes.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be brief. You know, as I listened today and just previous meetings, you know, Colonel Davis, respectfully, I'll just say again what I've said previously. You know, that there just seems to me, and I'm only speaking for myself, there seems to be a culture within state police of, amongst some, to you know, good people to delete things, and you know, as we continue to tighten up policy, we got to change that culture. In my opinion, it's never appropriate to direct anybody to delete anything. I don't care if it's an inappropriate text message or an inappropriate email. Nothing should ever be deleted, and there should never be a directive from anybody to delete anything. And I just still feel in my heart that there's a culture, and you know, these phone wiping incidents, I stand behind. You know, my conjecture is that was not an isolated incident. It was intentional, and it was just a part of the culture, in my opinion. Thank you, Chairman.
Representative Hughes. I retired 14 months ago, and my phone wasn't scrubbed when I left.
Wow. Wow. I want to personally thank you for your public service. You know, as I said in previous hearings, you know, our men and women in law enforcement, the majority of our men and women are good, honorable, decent people. And it's so unfortunate when just good, honorable, dedicated public servants like yourself, who signed up to be a law enforcement officer because you wanted to serve and protect. It's heartbreaking that you left out of disgust. And you know, we clearly lost a dedicated public servant. But I want to personally thank you for your service, and you know, hopefully your heart will lead you back one day. But thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I couldn't have said it any better, because look, when you said that, heartbreaking is a word. And I can see in your face the emotion that's involved in it. So again, I do want to thank you. Our board is finally clear. We do have some follow-up questions, but I think that's going to be for the Colonel, if he would come forward. I want to thank all of you. Thank you again. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Colonel, I'm not sure if it's you. First of all, welcome.
Hey, good afternoon. Colonel Lamar Davis, Louisiana State Police.
Colonel, Yeah, we had a couple of issues from our last meeting, and I'm gonna just go through them and before you answer them, and then if you got somebody else that can answer them. From our last meeting, we had one. We wanted to know the number of internal investigations related to Ronald Greene. So somebody was supposed to provide that information to us. That's one. Two, the number of people who have come under investigation related to Ronald Greene. And I'll repeat these if you need be. And then how many of those internal investigations are complete? How many of those investigations have resulted in sustained findings or findings of improper conduct? And lastly, how many internal investigations are ongoing? So anybody that can answer those, if you need me to repeat them, I know we went through them quickly. Okay, you should have. They said you got them. You got those sent to you ahead of time. So hopefully somebody has that and can respond.
Yes, sir. I have on my left my Commander of Internal Affairs, Captain Trion Lawverdane, and then Sergeant Richard Buckland from Internal Affairs.
All right.
Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chair and other committee members. My name is Trion Lawverdane. I'm the Commander of Internal Affairs currently. To answer your questions as it relates to internal affairs investigations that related to Mr. Ronald Greene, there were 10 IA cases that were directly related to that Mr. Greene's case. 10 people were investigated. 9 investigations have been completed. There were 14 sustainments and 1 IA case that's suspended pending the investigation by the IG's office.
All right. So 14 sustained findings. I guess I'm going to start right there. I assume some of the individuals had more than one.
Oh, yes, sir.
Allegation against them.
Yes, sir.
All right. All right. I'm going to open it up for any questions if anybody has any questions on that. Representative Bagala.
I doubt you'll share the specifics, but could you be giving a general idea of what was sustained? Was it
I can give you
sustained or what?
So I can answer that question.
Okay.
So the first case I'm looking at, use of force, body worn camera, in-car camera, unsatisfactory performance, and conduct of becoming an officer. The next one, courtesy, and body worn camera, in-car camera as well. The next one was different. So we have what's called a disciplinary review committee that people go before and the discipline is decided on. So for this case, when it went to the committee, there were 6 sustained violations. 5 sustained, 1 not sustained. And after the DRC met, they were changed to 2 sustained violations.
And what were those violations?
Okay, the original violations were use of force, use of taser, courtesy, treatment of prisoners in custody, body worn camera and in-car camera, and conduct unbecoming an officer.
And so those are the 5 that were?
Those were 6 that were presented to the committee, and after the committee met, and this was in 2020, treatment of prisoners in custody and body worn camera and in-car camera was what the 2 sustainments that were left.
And since in each of those sustainments would have been against one officer, I'm assuming.
Yes, sir. That's 3 different cases that I've given you so far.
And when was who is the committee?
So the disciplinary review committee consists of, say, for example, there's someone who's being investigated for that person, their commander, the major, the lieutenant colonel over that section, and then all other lieutenant colonels as well as the colonel.
And when were those cases? I'll use the word adjudicated. When did y'all make a final determination date?
I don't. Oh, yes, I do. Just give me a second to flip, if you would.
DRC 21. Got it. It's the last tab.
2 minutes.
Richard, you got the DRC findings?
I don't. It was in the fall of 2020.
No. The findings of the committee. It says 21, but it's not in this one.
Okay.
I can provide those to you.
Just give me an idea. I mean, was it this month, last month?
Oh, no,
6
sir.
months?
This was in 2020.
So in 2020?
Yes, sir.
So would you say that in 2020 that the IA investigation concluded?
The ones on the individuals that I'm looking at currently, 1, 2, 3 were for sure.
Are there any ongoing that have not been concluded?
The one I mentioned that's suspended administratively and is pending the IG's office. So just one, and that one was opened this year.
Okay, so that you have, I think I know which one that would be, but that would mean that everybody who was engaged with Greene on that date, who was subject to IA investigation, those investigations have been completed.
Correct.
How many people were fired?
I can say one's deceased. One is, that I see from this list, one is no longer employed here. One is currently, 2 are currently employed.
Okay. Thank you. I think my time is up.
Representative Villio.
Superintendent, do we have any indication of when the investigation regarding the phone wiping will be complete?
No, ma'am. As indicated, upon the last committee and adhering to some of the advice that's been given by you all, the next day I turned to the Inspector General and made a request for them to investigate. Obviously wanting to be transparent with regards to that investigation. I did ask that it be prioritized, and as such, they are working on that investigation, but that's all I know at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Marcel.
Yes, ma'am. Laverdane?
Laverdane.
Are you related to Representative Laverdane?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. I'll go light on you then. No, seriously. Seriously,
yes,
you
ma'am.
said that one is no longer, 2 of them are still there. One is deceased, and one left. How did he leave? Did he go out with a nice retirement party, or did he quit? He just quit, or?
I'm sorry, I didn't finish going through my list of cases.
But the
of
ones
the
that
10.
you referred to, you was talking to Bacalot. You said 2 of them are still there.
Yes, only
One of them
2
deceased.
are still here.
Right?
Correct.
One of them's deceased, and one of them is gone. Is what you said. He's no longer there.
Well, we have a couple of them that are no longer here.
Okay, can you tell
That
me?
have retired.
Okay, that's what I'm about to ask you. So how did they leave? In the middle of an investigation, an IA investigation, they retired. That's what you're saying?
One did in the middle of an investigation.
And what happened to the other ones?
The other 2, their case was completed. They were just found not sustained.
Not sustained.
Yes, ma'am, for the allegation that was being
And what allegations were those that they were found not sustained on?
Interference was one.
Interference?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, 2 of them were interference. And the one that left under investigation was conduct unbecoming, interference, unsatisfactory performance.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, the board is clear. I don't think we have any other questions.
Sir, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir.